And speaking of knowledge, let's get counting. Number 10, Marvel's Lifeline. One of the best things about the Ultimate line was what it did for Marvel as a company and a publisher. It provided a lifeline to Marvel at a time when it needed it the most. The comics industry bubble that once had made collectibles so valuable had burst. The hype and demand of the early 90s had vanished completely, leaving Marvel with tons of comics printed that would simply not sell. With the demand gone and production costs putting them into the red, Marvel was forced to sell off licenses to some of their best characters. This is how Sony got the rights to Spider-Man and how Fox got the rights to X-Men. And it's what prompted Marvel to change things up and create the Ultimate Universe. The Ultimate Universe was meant to be something fresh and new, free of continuity and ultimately more gritty, realistic, and with an edge. Amazingly, the new line of Ultimate Comics did well. So well that it provided Marvel with the stability it needed to recover. Without the Ultimate line, it's possible that we might not have the Marvel stories, animated series, films, or comics of today. That's how successful and important Ultimates was. Number 9, the Inhumans. I've said it before and I will say it again, I think the design of the Inhumans is much better on Earth 1610. They look more compelling and intimidating. Nothing against the 616 Inhumans, who I also like just fine, but I actually want to get to know these Inhumans more. Overall, I think the Ultimate Inhumans are a little more interesting than their main continuity counterparts. Number 8, no previous continuity. One of the best things that the Ultimate Universe and line offered readers was a fresh start, meaning that years and years of comic book history didn't really apply here. The idea was you didn't have to know what had gone on in the past or what was going on currently in the comics to just jump into a book, with comic book continuity being a concept that many new readers still find daunting today. This was freeing for consumers because it meant you could buy in without having to worry about potentially being confused because something from 20 years prior came up that you needed to understand in order to know what was really going on in the story. This wasn't the case for Earth 1610. At least, it wasn't the case to begin with. Freedom from continuity meant more creative freedom for writers, but unfortunately, Ultimates really only started as new reader accessible, but quickly became bogged down with intricate storytelling and details. It even ended up having retcons as well, which might confuse readers jumping in later on, with the first Ultimate Iron Man series being so out there that Marvel decided to retcon it out of existence, instead turning it into a ridiculous anime show set in the same universe, but that wasn't actually considered to be the true story of Iron Man. So that comic basically became like non-canon. Number 7, Sue and Reed splits. Finally, this reality is one where Sue seems to be more aware that Reed can never really fully commit to her. He proposes right before Ultimatum goes down and they are faced with a giant wave as a result. Sue manages to push the wave back but slips into a comatose state as a result, prompting Reed to go out looking to punish the villains and abandoning Sue, leaving her with the Thing, aka Ben Grimm. In the Ultimate Universe, Reed and Sue actually don't end up together in the end. In fact, Sue, after she's revived, finds out about a sinister plot of Reed's, realizing that he has become a villain. Ben attempts to try and explain how Reed could just be up to something that they both don't fully understand, but Sue is over making any more excuses for him, implying that she never wanted to marry him to begin with. In fact, Sue and Ben actually end up together, with Reed becoming a villain. For some reason, I actually find this to be just a better fit for these two characters, just in terms of their overall paths. As much as they've had some pretty sweet moments together on Earth 616, the couple has also had major problems over the years that sometimes seem just to get swept under the rug so that we can, try to keep them together without any resolution of those problems. This, however, provides us with some resolution and consequence for those moments. And it kind of addresses some of them, which I like. Just feels a little more realistic. Number 6, Nick Fury. Another great thing that the Ultimate Universe gave us was a new Nick Fury that was so successful he actually became the new version of Nick Fury in the main continuity, and inspired the MCU version of the character as well. Hilariously enough, Samuel L. Jackson's likeness inspired the redesign of the character. Fury would even acknowledge that Jackson would be his top pick to play him in a movie. The story goes that originally Samuel L. Jackson was actually not too happy about Marvel using his likeness without really asking him or without any compensation or conversation about it, but when he contacted them, they actually apologized and offered him the role of Nick Fury in any future films. Jackson supposedly was appeased and accepted the offer, and the rest, they say, is history. Today, I personally cannot imagine the MCU without him. Number 5, Death. Wait a minute, Amanda, didn't you just cite death as being a bad thing on your worst list? Yes, I did. We were talking about Ultimatum. But that was more death for the sake of death, not death in general. I actually enjoy when characters die. Well, I don't enjoy when they die, but more that I enjoy the finality that death invites. I like death as consequences, but more than that, I like the higher stakes that it gives us. If anyone at any point can die, it means that everything is more exciting because, they might not make it back from that mission. Their actions carry more weight because there's a real risk that they face. When characters can die, it also means stories get to end, and with endings come new and exciting beginnings. Number 4, The Maker. Talk about unique spins on characters. The Maker definitely offered us a completely different take on Reed Richards, one that was more modern and actually felt like it kind of fit better, not just within the world, but within a more current day and age. I think a huge issue with the Fantastic Four that we see when it comes to adapting that team to sort of a film setting in the modern day is that the heroes are kind of stiff. They're definitely a product of the time period in which they were created, a perfect and kind of wholesome family unit. The Ultimate Universe shattered that expectation, broke up the Fantastic Four team, and gave us the amazing villain that is the Maker, a version of Reed Richards whose love and dedication to science actually makes him a horrifying, immoral, pretty much mad scientist type, if a mad scientist could somehow also be disturbingly sane and logical. The Maker is one of the best villains to have ever existed in comics in general, not even just within the confines of the Ultimate Universe, which of course the Maker would also literally break free from in the comics. Number 3, Ultimate Spider-Man. Although there were many problems when it came to the continuity of the Ultimate Universe, the Spider-Man series was not one of them. In fact, Ultimate Spider-Man was more celebrated for being a breath of fresh air that remained consistently coherent throughout. To this day, it remains some fans' favorite Spider-Man comic series, period, and not just one of their favorite series within the Ultimate Universe. Some even hold this series above any of the Spider-Man main continuity stuff. Why was the Spider-Man series so good from Ultimates? It had a sense of finality, and it wasn't wishy-washy. It committed, it followed through, it offered fresh new takes on characters, and whether or not you loved all of those new takes, you had to respect them. Most of those changes were made to make Spider-Man's stories and characters feel more grounded, more realistic. Peter also returned to high school, which a lot of fans enjoyed because they felt it was younger Peter, Spider-Man in high school, that was kind of his most relatable version. So taking him back there felt really good. Number 2, Miles Morales. One of the greatest things to come out of Ultimate Spider-Man as well, the story and character of Miles Morales, whom we've all come to love very dearly. What's more, Peter's apparent death also paved the way for Miles, allowing him to step into the spotlight as Spider-Man, and even take over. Even after we learned that Peter Parker had actually survived as well and wasn't actually dead due to the Oz formula making him virtually immortal, he still decided to pass the torch to Miles. He'd had his time as a hero, now it was Miles' turn. I just love how the story goes. I love that Miles truly got to be the one and only Spider-Man on Earth 1610. And while I love Peter, I kind of hope we get to see Miles step into the spotlight as the one and only Spider-Man at some point on Earth 616 too. Or bring back a world where he is the one and only Spider-Man. Number 1, the MCU. The Ultimate line is what helped to pave the way for the MCU, and in fact provided much needed inspiration for the cinematic universe. There are many characters from Earth 1610 who have influenced their Earth 199999 counterparts. That is, their Marvel Cinematic Universe counterparts. Not only have characters from the Ultimate Universe found their way to the big screen through the MCU, but stories from the Ultimate line have also served to inspire some of those told to us in the films.
Number 10, Hawkeye. Ultimate Hawkeye first appeared in Ultimate issue 7, and he doesn't mind going for the kill this time around. He was a SHIELD agent who wasn't as fancy when it came to arrows, he's just more military this time around. It's actually pretty dark at times. He became a super soldier once briefly when the Avengers were put on the USS Jimmy Carter. They got captured, and then Hawkeye and a few others ingested super soldier serum, and then they rescued Nick Fury. Hawkeye is a pretty sweet agent. He's badass, he gets it done. But his family life and dynamic with Black Widow this time around is much different than most would think. When a team of mercenaries broke into Clint's house early on, they took out his wife and kids, which is awful. But it gets even worse when you find out that Black Widow was the leader of said mercenary team. And then Hawkeye gets even in a pretty gruesome way. 3 arrows perfectly placed. Gory. Pretty gory. Very gory. Number 9, Nick Fury. When he entered the Ultimates in Marvel Team Up issue 5, Nick Fury would soon take over as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And his first plan was to bring back the Super Soldier program, which actually resulted in the creation of Ultimate Captain America and Ultimate Hulk, etc. His origins are pretty unique. I mean, he fought for the US in World War II, and tragically he was taken by force to be the next test subject for Project Rebirth. When he was injected with this new serum, it gave him super strength, and in turn, he freed himself and other prisoners and busted out of there. So now he's got quite the power behind those punches, and Ultimate Nick Fury is way cooler than our 616 Nick Fury because he was designed to look like Samuel L. Jackson, so it's really no contest. And before we continue on with this list of Ultimate heroes, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help our channel out a lot. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's go right back into this list. Thank you so much. Number 8, Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner made his Ultimate debut in Ultimate X-Men issue 7. Now his origins here had him growing up in the Weapon X program, and he was trained to become an assassin from the start. He had a pretty dark upbringing, and in turn he would have these bad pockets with the X-Men. Like Warren and Dazzler were a couple, but Kurt also liked Dazzler, so he kidnapped her? Okay. And the team was like, hey, so we're gonna put you in a coma now because that's not cool. We can't really do that. And then he came back and he apologized. The dust was settled, no hard feelings. Okay, sure. He joined Colossus' X-Men team with Dazzler and Angel, by the way, so it was definitely fine. Kurt wasn't all bad. He was actually kind of funny, I mean, as a character, because sometimes he would use the Danger Room with Angel to reenact Pirates of the Caribbean instead of, you know, fighting bad guys. So already this version is my kind of guy. I mean, minus the kidnapping part, of course. Him and Angel were tight because they couldn't hide their mutations, so they ended up being best of friends. So they fought pirates together, chased the same girls, they're living the mutant dream in a way. Not bad. Sadly, Kurt was killed by Magneto's ultimatum wave, and it got a lot of other X-Men killed as well. So it's dark, it's nice, and then it's dark. That's the Ultimates. Number 7, the Hulk. First appearing in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 2, he's still big, he's still angry, but this time around he is gray. Okay. Now before this, however, Bruce Banner wanted to be just like Captain America, back before he was the Hulk, back before he was big and strong. So at Cambridge University, he was committed to duplicating the Super Soldier Serum with helps of Nick Fury's Super Soldier blood. So he used it on himself, and honestly, already I'm a fan of Bruce Banner more. I mean, the Hulk hasn't even been created yet, and then Nick Fury, the first Super Soldier, gathered the best genetic engineers to recreate the serum, and Bruce was luckily amongst them. So Bruce actually thought that he figured this thing out, but again, he wanted to be like Cap and he wanted to stay quiet, so he tested this new serum out on himself, and then he ended up becoming Ultimate Hulk. Later on, Bruce decided to make even more serum, so he mixed Super Soldier Serum again with this new Hulk serum, smashed them together, injected himself, so now Super Soldier Nick Fury actually made Banner the Hulk in this timeline. That's a cool sentence right there. Number 6. Deadpool. Meet Wade Wilson. He had a pretty rough go in the Ultimates, as do most of them. I'd say more intense than his 616 counterpart, because in Ultimate Spider-Man, Wilson gets hired by the Genosian government, but of course in Deadpool's spirit, he gets hired to double down and hunt these mutants, but it's also a TV event. It's fun. And then when Deadpool is going up against Spider-Man, he actually gets unmasked. And his appearance is even more shocking in this reality. Even the host has to apologize to the viewers at home, because his mask, I mean, to begin with, wasn't even really a mask. It's translucent, so not really the best. And then Spider-Man even adds insult to injury, saying that his face smells like a KFC dumpster on a hot day. So if anybody needs redemption, it's definitely Wade Wilson from the Ultimates. Number 5, Juggernaut. The first time we see him, it's very clear that he's more powerful. Something is up with this X-Men. He looked like a future version of the Juggernaut. It was pretty intimidating. Now he looks like an evil stripper from the future, which is... honestly, I like it. It's cool. He was a genius in this universe as well. I mean, literally, the guy was super smart. He grew up in the same trailer park as Rogue, and he still considered himself trailer trash, although he was one of the smartest people alive. Guys, never doubt yourself. Things took a turn when he was taken by Weapon X and forced to be this living weapon of mass destruction, and following the orders of Colonel John Wraith, he was part of their strike force that took out the X-Men, or even worse, forced the X-Men into Weapon X, which we heard plenty of early on in this list. He walked tall and mighty until he got taken out in the dumbest way possible. Like the Juggernaut, this makes me upset. He for sure needs a redemption, that's all I'm saying. Even when he's fighting Rogue later on, he still wants them to be happy and in love. He still wants that dream, so he's still a good guy deep down. And then Ultimate X-Men issue 99, in the middle of a fight, he gets taken down because of a poisonous Dart. A dart. Yeah, just one of those. That's it. The Juggernaut got taken out by a dart. It went right through his visor gap. I mean, amazing aim, but come on. This is the same guy that dropped a building on Gambit? Number 4, Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards needs a redemption on screen before anything else. I mean, the last Fantastic Four movie, I mean, if you haven't watched it, honestly, don't. Marvel's redoing them soon. You might as well just wait it out. In the Ultimate version, it was dark, and he was younger, and honestly, he was cooler. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 1, and even at the start of Ultimatum, when that big wave hit, Sue bites the bullet, and he didn't waste any time. He's not happy. He immediately blames Namor, and by blaming, I mean he knocks him out first and then asks questions later. Okay, Reed, chill. Eventually, he becomes a villain in this universe, referring to himself as the Maker, and caused some trouble in the 616 universe as well, after his universe was destroyed. Now, this is the Mr. Fantastic that we need. This guy gets the job done. He's scary. Number 3, Wolverine. Making his first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue 1, he didn't remember his past, and he thinks that he was once married. He has a ring, and he thinks Sabretooth killed his family. It's all a blur. Stressful. No thanks to Weapon X. Now, Ultimate James Howlett is actually the first mutant, and it turns out that this time around, you can kill Wolverine. You just have to rip his bones out that happen to have adamantium built into it. That ought to do it. Also, so painful. This all takes place during the Fatal Attractions event, and Wolverine doesn't even have a chance to scream. The adamantium that bonded to his bones erupted outward like water bursting through a dam. There's a nice picture for you. And he's still breathing when this happens. I mean, if this isn't one of the worst things to go through, I don't know what is. Number 2, Thor. Making his first entry in the Ultimates with issue 4, Thor Odinson actually looks a lot like our current MCU Thor, and I think he might have more in common than we think. For starters, the Ultimate Thor needs a magic belt to have powers, and in Spider-Man Homecoming, Happy mentions Thor's magic belt and all the stuff that they're packing up on Moving Day. So Thor just might need this come Love and Thunder, but in the comics, Loki was convincing everybody that Thor is just an insane dude with a magic belt. And they kind of bought it. What happens was he wasn't worthy yet, so he got his ass kicked, and then finally in Ultimates 2, issue 12, he gets his powers back. But the fact that this Thor went through all that to begin with, so sad. Definitely so sad. Number 1, Quicksilver. Okay, yeah, he's in love with his sister in the Ultimates, and it's weird, and it's gross. Yeah, sure. But this Quicksilver otherwise was far more superior. He was faster in the Ultimate Universe, he was supersonic when it comes to speeds. He almost reached the speed of light at one point, like, come on, dude. And as long as he's still alive, he can always re-heal himself. In Ultimate Wolverine issue 3, Pietro grabs Logan and runs with him. He was actually trying to tear the flesh off him, and if it was anybody else but Wolverine, it probably would have worked. And in Ultimate Comics 29, he heals himself using his super fast metabolism, and he uses his super speed to study Reed Richards' notes. He says he's not smart, but he is fast, so he ran the math nearly 100,000 times. That's insane. Quicksilver needs a comeback for sure, more so on screen than I think any superhero right now. Hashtag Ralph Boner. Kicking off the list at number 10, Vampire King. If there's one thing we need, it's more Vampire Hulk. I mean, right? That's what you were just thinking of. Also, scariest thing you can imagine, easily. He made his first debut at Ultimate Comics Avengers issue 3, and at first he was actually Nerd Hulk, which we see in the MCU right now. God, I hope he doesn't turn into a vampire. Or maybe I do, I don't know. Now, he was a clone of the Hulk that Captain America could take down, so he was smart, but he couldn't win a physical fight. So the Avengers kind of kicked him out. They're like, great, you're smart, but you can't punch, so beat it, pal. Rude. But that's when the next version of Nerd Hulk came to be. He was bitten by a vampire and took over an entire vampire horde. Now, the solution to a vampire Hulk was easier than we might have thought. Just teleport him into sunlight. And that's exactly what happened in Ultimate Avengers 18. We definitely need this guy to come back, especially now, post-COVID. He'd make a mark. Number 9, the Magician. A magician, the Magician. Who is he? The first Ultimate X-Men character that doesn't actually have a counterpart. So the Magician is OG in the Ultimates. Meet Elliot Boggs. He made his grand entrance at Ultimate X-Men issue 66, created by Robert Kirkman and Tom Rainey. Now, he was always dedicated to protect humanity, which is a great thing in a superhero. We want that. But when his powers came to be, the police thought that Elliot was the cause of his parents' death. Rightfully so. I mean, this guy can warp reality, but he can't even control it. So you don't really want to be around him. him, but you kind of want to be around him. He was able to create people, which is a pretty amazing ability. Dangerous, but amazing. So he worked with the X-Men for a bit, and then he worked with the Academy of Tomorrow for a bit, and then Nick Fury secretly talked to Xavier in hopes to get the Magician into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Now the team attacked Elliot after some drama. They thought it was a threat, so he just created more villains. He just created more instances of Multiple Man, Blob, and Toad from the Brotherhood to attack. And Wolverine finished the kid off with his claws to the chestal plate, and it turns out that was just a manifestation, and Elliot was actually still alive. He just needs to disappear to work on his power. Fair. Where are you now? Is it good? Come back. I don't know. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It's really helpful for our channel. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your constant support. Let's get right back into this list. Number 8, a teen mutant. This next one is a one-off. He doesn't have a name, so we're just going to refer to him as Teen Mutant for now. He doesn't last too long. Now at first, he looks like a regular kid. There's posters on his wall. He's got Wolverine on his wall, which is cool. He reminds me of me a little bit, you know. And the caption says, be different. So he took that advice maybe a little bit too far. So he wakes up, he's ready for school, he's looking for breakfast, and his mother is just nowhere to be seen. Only a pile of her clothes remains on the ground. So he calls the cops. Just kidding, he didn't do that. He just went to school after leaving a note. Don't do this, kids. Don't do that at all. On the way there, he sees a collar on the ground, again by itself, just clothing laid on the sidewalk. What's going on? Now finally, he sees people, so he's not going crazy, which is a relief, but I bet he wishes that he was crazy, because he had this neat ability where people just don't survive being close to him. He hears it from the guy in the poster, Wolverine himself, when he finds him ducking out in a cave. So what happened was, when he hit puberty, this teen, he developed a specific mutation that radiates a series of toxins and acid-like poisons, which wipes out any organic tissue and just turns it into vapor, turns it into mist. The number of the day that he ended up taking out just because he hit puberty was 265. And I thought pimples were bad. Number 7, Silver Searcher. So the name is a little different for Norrin Radd in the Ultimates. He made his first debut in Ultimate Fantastic 4 issue 42. He was teleported to Earth after Reed Richards mistook him for a star that he wanted to harness. So he brought him here. Awesome. It wasn't his fault. So naturally the world was also in chaos because of his arrival. But Norrin said that he would summon his master who would make the population of Earth happier than they've ever been. Fresh water for all, free phone plans, taxing the rich. What is this plan, sir? The Searcher's master was Zenla's ruler at the time. Revka Termaloon Edifax Skyros III. Rolls off the tongue nice and easy. Cool. Also known as the king without enemies. Let's just go with that. So this king would use mind control. That's the trick here, to get mind control and get these humans to worship them. So after Psycho Man took over the Earth, Silver Searcher rescued Mr. Fantastic and asked him to save the planet. Now the Searcher helped the Fantastic Four afterwards and then continued wandering the depths of space. Now we'd love to see a betrayal, especially when it's for the good side, you know? Norrin is great, and in the Ultimates, he is immortal, and he's powerful enough to go against the Phoenix, so yeah, we need more of him. Number 6, Loki. Making his first appearance in the Ultimates 2 issue 1, Loki Odinson was much more powerful here. He has the ability to shuffle time and space, as Thor simply puts it. In the beginning, Loki would fight alongside Thor and Balder. They were the Warriors 3. Now his mother was a prisoner of Odin and asked him to bring her the Norn stones, but while he was stealing them, he took out his brother Balder and of course was banished to Asgard afterwards. Now Loki can literally warp reality in the Ultimates. He can retcon history into anything he wanted to. He could create these events that just never happened, until he was depowered by Odin, of course. Now even after he was depowered, he was still able to put up quite a fight as our normal Loki. Now I want to see more Warriors 3 with them. Like, I would watch a show with just those 3 any day. It's probably gonna come, realistically, at this rate that Marvel's going at. Number 5, Iron Man. Making his first appearance in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 4, Ultimate Iron Man has some medical issues as well, but it's much more bizarre this time around. It's not his heart that makes him unique, it's actually his brain. Now he was born a genius, of course, and he was also one of 2 twin boys, the other being Gregory Stark. Now Tony originally wanted to start his own business with his current girlfriend Josie Gardner, but after so much pressure from his father, he decided to join the family business, and Josie ended up leaving Tony because of this. She was like, oh, I thought we had a thing? Okay, see ya. Then 6 months later, Josie tragically passed away in a plane crash. Now the plane crash was orchestrated by Mandarin International, which was a company that used to work with Howard Stark earlier, but cut ties. Drama. So Howard wanted Tony to put all that pain into work for the company, but Tony was like, you know what, I think nanotechnology is where I'm going to put that energy. So after his father's passing, Tony then had to fully take over the company, but by then he was a troubled celebrity, he was an alcoholic, and things got even harder for Tony when he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. So he mixed his biotech with armor and he bought himself some time. Now ultimate Tony Stark's tumor was actually an infinity stone growing in his brain, so with the nanotech body and everything, it just made him stronger, so much stronger. So this gave Tony the ability to transfer his consciousness between other machines. He's actually friends with his brain tumor in this world. His name is actually Anthony. It's a little boy. It's like a separate living hallucination boy. Totally normal. Number 4, Colossus. Making his first appearance in the 1610 universe with Ultimate X-Men issue 1, Peter Rasputin aka Colossus was discovered during the Cold War. He was attacked by Anatol Spichkin, but when it was confirmed that Peter was indeed a mutant, a deal was made instead. Anatol would keep his secret and he was so ready to give Peter a job, but down the road, if he ever needed one, he had a job for him down the road. Of course, he was a giant guy made of metal. He's like, hey, I got some for you to do, trust me. Roofing, stapling, some hammering, we can find you some things. Peter's father, like most fathers in these comics, was not a pleasant man, so Peter thought, you know what, I could use some of that help now, let's go. And then he went back to Anatol because the thing is, Ultimate Colossus had thick skin, literally he was made of steel, but he wasn't strong enough where it really made a huge difference. I mean, sure, drywall is easier to punch through, but it was heavy. Like imagine wearing a skin suit of metal. The Tin Man probably had insane calves, but it wasn't until Anatol introduced Peter to this drug called Banshee, and that's where he got the strength behind those metal mitts. So now Colossus, on narcotics, was taking on these jobs, these super strong tourist gigs, and at the age of 19, Peter was picked up from Big Boris, a Russian mafia boss, and then he worked with him for 10 years. So he just joined the mafia for 10 years from 19 to 29. You know, the usual thing you do after you're 19. He kept his powers a secret mostly for those around him, and then one day during a botched arm deal, Peter and his team were shot at. Peter survived because of his thick skin, and his mutant ability was also exposed in a much greater way. He was kind of screwed until Jean Grey found him and then offered him a spot with the X-Men. That's actually where he got the codename Colossus. Now this version is unreal. He's close with Wolverine as they both share, you know, horrible backgrounds. They would walk the streets at night just trying to solve these dark cases, looking for trouble. Imagine these two bumping into you. No chance. In Ultimate War, he took on Thor and Iron Man at the same time for 10 minutes. So, how wild is that? Number 3, Ultimate Red Skull. Making his debut in the Ultimate Comics Avengers 1 back in 2009, Ultimate Red Skull is, I know, a villain, but he wasn't always that way. He's a lot different than the Red Skull that we know from our main continuity. He's actually the son of Steve Rogers in this universe and Gail Richards. They even hid him and trained him to become the next Captain America. The Ultimates are wild. This is the dream scenario. But he always feared that he would never live up to his father's expectations. Now, it's not like he was raised in a bad household, it was kind of the opposite. He was raised to become a superhero. He was raised to fill some rather big boots. He was raised to become the next Captain America after he was declared dead in Iceland. So he kind of had the dream job and he was more powerful than Steve Rogers as well. So what happened? So when we're talking about comebacks, I really think Ultimate Red Skull could have been a treat. Now he was eventually in charge of the military that he grew up with. He figured out now that he was a leader and he used it against them. His personality as well was pretty easygoing, so it wasn't hard to convince anybody what he was doing. But again, he had this mental wall where he could never live up to Father Rogers. So at age 17, he escaped and took out every doctor and soldier on that team. He just wiped everybody out. So evil. And then he used a kitchen knife to really complete the whole Red Skull look. A nice do-it-yourself makeover. Nice and haunting. So he had all the tools to be great, but that pressure of Steve Rogers took him down the wrong path. Interesting. Number 2, Magneto. He made his first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue 1. Eric Lenscher was born to 2 Canadian agents of Weapon X. Now he got his abilities and mastered magnetism at a young age, and his father didn't respond well to that. He was intoxicated most of the time, and he attacked Eric one day, not an ideal living situation for a child. Now he tried to shoot Eric once, but those powers naturally came out, and then Eric pushed the bullet right back. So Eric had to spend his teen years with that guilt weighing down on him. Now eventually he was disgusted with Weapon X, the whole idea of finding a cure for the mutant gene through means of. So he used these abilities, freed Mutant X, Wolverine, who I talked about in part 1 of this list, which you for sure watched. And then Eric married a human woman named Isabel, but he left her once he met Charles Xavier. They didn't fall in love. He was fascinated. This is the first adult mutant that he's ever met, and they share the same ideologies on them. So Eric grabbed these mutant kids from a previous lover and then denied ever loving a human woman. Rough. The Brotherhood relocated to the Savage Land a few years later, and then Eric started referring to the mutants as an army, which is bad news. He was changing, as were his views on this whole mutant operation. He even started going by the name Magneto, totally abandoned his human name, and then Xavier was no longer on board. I mean, this is Supervillain 101. Anybody can see a villain in the making, especially if you can read minds. That sure does help. So Magneto made a helmet that prevented that from ever happening. This helmet prevented psi intrusion into his mind, and it also looked cool. So when Charles took a few loyal followers and made a run for it, Magneto was pretty upset and broke Charles' spine, leaving him in the wheelchair. And finally, number 1, we have Miles Morales. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout issue 4, just a couple months before the death of Peter Parker. Now Norman Osborn was arrested and revealed as the Green Goblin, and then a young thief broke into that empty Osborn industry, and then that's where a genetically enhanced spider found its way into the thief's backpack. Now while Miles Morales was visiting his Uncle Aaron, that spider just happened to crawl out of Uncle Aaron's bag, and then it bit Miles Morales. He of course got these amazing abilities, the Spider-Man abilities, but on top of that he could also turn invisible, which is a pretty sweet gig. That plus Stun Blast makes Miles pretty hard to take down. Now the thing is, what makes him unique is at first Miles didn't really want to be a hero. He wanted to leave that up to the real Spider-Man until his untimely departure, saving his family from Osborn. So Miles got to the scene, but it was too late and too ahead of him. So he felt guilt after this for not being able to save Peter, so he suited up and joined the battle. His first villain was against Kangaroo, and he took him on wearing a Spider-Man Halloween costume, which is a great look. I honestly love Miles. I'm so happy he's in a bigger part of the Spider-Verse that we're currently in, and I'm betting that we meet live-action Miles Morales in the next Spider-Man movie. I think that's the only thing they've managed to keep a secret about that film. I'm calling it now. Guys, who would you cast for a live-action Miles Morales? Let us know in the comments.
Number 10. Hulk. Bruce Banner is still the Hulk in this reality, but instead of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and ending up being exposed to gamma radiation, which would transform him into the Hulk against his will, he was a researcher working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and with the Ultimates to try and rediscover the super soldier serum. Yeah, in the Ultimates, much like in the MCU, everything is kinda connected by this one single thread, this one purpose, the super soldier serum. Bruce would believe he had uncovered the serum and decided against S.H.I.E.L.D.'s better judgment to test it on himself. This would turn him into the monster we'd come to know as the Hulk, but only when Bruce was using the serum. He could not change at will, and his transformation was not initially triggered by intense emotions or rage. However, he would then blend the actual super soldier serum formula extracted from the blood of the revived Captain America, Stephen Rogers, with the Hulk serum, which would end up resulting in his transformations becoming a permanent aspect of his DNA. Number 9. Elektra. While still super heroically fanciful, Elektra's backstory in the 1610 universe is just a touch more grounded than her 616 counterpart. Instead of her mother being murdered and dying a very violent death, she instead died of breast cancer. Elektra was not made to train in martial arts when she was young, but rather enjoyed martial arts, and so she trained in martial arts out of her own interest, with Bruce Lee acting as an inspiration for her, as a fan of his. She ended up becoming a villain all because of a fellow university student who was a jerk, the wealthy Calvin Langstrom, who tormented her at school because she was willing to stand up to him and defend others against him. Because of this, he made Elektra's life a living hell, attacking one of her friends and even hiring thugs to burn down her father's laundromat business as well as her family home. It was because of this that Elektra turned to the dark side. Frustrated that there was no justice for her or any of Langstrom's victims, no matter the crime that he committed due to his wealth and his connections, she ended up attempting to kill him, setting off on a darker path than her fellow friend and vigilante, Daredevil. At one point she's like, "Daredevil, you coming with me or are you gonna help this Langstrom guy?" And he's like, "I'm gonna help this guy?" I was like, dude, just go with Elektra. Elektra's on like a, she's bad, but she's trying to be good, you know what I mean? I don't know, I love bad girls. I'm like, she bad, but she good. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you love this list as much as I loved writing it for you, please be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Also give it a thumbs up because I want to tell you more origins. And so if you give it a thumbs up, there's a better chance that'll happen. Number 8. Hawkeye. Hawkeye is actually a lot more mysterious in the Ultimate Universe than the version we have from the main continuity comics. It's even been implied before that Clint Barton might not actually be Hawkeye's true name, but even an alias from the name he was given at birth. So mysterious. Instead of being someone who picked up his skills from swordsmen around the carnival circuit, Hawkeye was a former Olympic archer turned Black Ops agent who worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. The Earth 1610 story from Hawkeye more mirrors his MCU story, where he ends up settling down and having a family, but tragically in the Ultimate Universe, when the Ultimates are betrayed by fellow member Black Widow, Hawkeye's family is killed and he is kidnapped, tormented, and interrogated by Natasha's true allies. Don't worry though, he manages to escape. Thank goodness. With only his fingernails as weapons. That's how you know you're cool, if you can just fight with fingernails. I don't think I could ever do that, although mine are pretty sharp, so maybe. Number 7. Bucky Barnes. As opposed to being the camp's mascot like he was in the golden age of Marvel Comics, Bucky here was a young friend of Steve's who joined him on his journey in the military working as a press photographer. Makes sense. Bucky would not go missing before Steve, or actually go missing at all. Instead, it would be Steve who went MIA and was presumed dead, and Bucky who had to live with this and move on. Bucky Barnes would not become the Winter Soldier, but instead would live a relatively normal life, returning home and bonding with Roger's fiancée Gale. In fact, the two grew so close that they ended up in a romantic relationship, and Buck would marry Gale instead. By the time Steve returns from the ice, Barnes is now an old man. I like this reality where like Bucky just gets to grow up and like have a normal life. It's pretty cool. Number 6. Black Widow. In the reality of Earth 1610, Black Widow never truly reformed, but instead was a spy and villain the whole time. Gasp. It turned out that she was a double agent who was only pretending to serve the interests of the United States. While posing as one of their heroes, she was actually still loyal to Russia and the antagonistic team known as the Liberators, of which she was also secretly a member. Shh, don't tell anyone. Her goal was to destroy the Ultimates, and after winning over their trust and even becoming engaged to Iron Man, she betrayed the Ultimates and turned on them, revealing her true colors. Of course, she may have revealed those true colors a little too soon, as Iron Man easily apprehended her and turned her over to the authorities, but not before she could kill his butler Jarvis in cold blood. R.I.P. Jarvis. Number 5. Spider-Man. While Peter Parker's story was not too different from his 616 counterpart, he wouldn't end up being the only Spider-Man in the Earth of 1610, and in fact Peter would eventually leave the mantle, passing it on to someone in his place. Someone new and very different from our Earth 616 Spidey. Yep, we are talking about the beloved Miles Morales. Miles was introduced in the Ultimate Universe and became such a fan favorite that he ended up moving over to Earth 616. Even after the Ultimate line was ended. Miles' backstory was that he was a teenage kid who was bit by a genetically enhanced spider exposed to the Oz formula while he was visiting his criminal uncle Aaron Davis. Miles was your average, awkward, but lovable hero who happened to be a teenager caught in the middle somewhat of family drama, with his uncle being a criminal and his dad Jefferson drawn into crime alongside his brother Aaron, who ended up working in secret as Fury's eyes and ears in the criminal world, but then later decided to leave it all behind and become a police officer instead. Number 4. Valkyrie. Valkyrie had a very different story than our 616 counterpart. Instead of being an Asgardian inhabiting the body of Barbara Norris, who we know as Brunhilde, she was just Barbara Norris, a 19-year-old girl who was basically obsessed with superheroes, but who had no powers of her own. She was a big Thor fan, and so she kinda decided to imitate his look, dressing up like a scantily clad, sort of Norse goddess or warrior. Barbara did have some skills as a martial artist in training, but was not nearly as experienced as she claimed to be. She wouldn't receive powers until Loki tricked her and her team, the Defenders, into pledging loyalty to him in exchange for said powers. They did not know that Loki was Loki at the time. Valkyrie's gifted powers would grant her superhuman strength, durability, and would allow her to fly. Number 3. Iron Man. Iron Man's initial backstory, which got retconned into just being basically a weird anime show, was a lot different than his 616 counterpart. I know that technically this is no longer canon in terms of his backstory within the 1610 universe, as instead his initial origins was moved over to Earth 55921, but before that happened, before it was retconned away, it was canon in the 1610 universe, and I like to remind everyone of just how gloriously bizarre it was. So here we go. Orson Scott Card was the writer behind the series, a sci-fi writer who you might might recognize the name of, as he is the author of many other acclaimed science fiction works such as Ender's Game, which if you are like me, you read Ender's Game in school and you were like, this book's actually pretty good. I don't know if that's what happened to you, but that was my story. I feel like that's actually maybe why I like sci-fi today. That might have been the beginning. Maybe. That and Stargate. The Ultimate Iron Man series, however, ended up being a little too out there for comic book fans in terms of what it offered when it came to shaking up Tony's origins. Shook it up a little too much. Tony here was a child who was altered while in his mother's womb by a lab accident. He ended up being born with neural tissue all over him, which made him extremely sensitive to the world around him, but also made him hyper intelligent. His father Howard would create a liquid suit to protect his son from the world he was so sensitive to, but this suit would have its drawbacks and would also make Tony appear blue. So there you go. Number 2. Nick Fury. Nick Fury was changed quite a bit in the Ultimate Universe. This is 616 Nick Fury, a former World War II soldier turned super spy whose life was saved by the Infinity Formula. This is 1610 Nick Fury, a former World War II soldier who worked alongside Wilson Fisk's grandfather and Wolverine at the time, but who was taken in by the US military and forcibly experimented on as part of Project Rebirth. In fact, this version of Nick Fury from the Ultimate Universe has an origin story that kind of echoes that of Isaiah Bradley of Earth 616, one of the first super soldiers. In fact, I believe his origins came out only a few years prior to this Origins, which was added in sort of later. 2008 we got it for Nick Fury, and I think for Isaiah we got it like, I want to say 2003? 1610 Nick Fury would be altered by the serum he was given, which of course was the super soldier serum, but he would use his enhanced strength and abilities to help his fellow prisoners escape. This version of Fury was also modeled after Samuel L. Jackson, who would later end up being promised a part in potential future films, in order to help make amends after Jackson noticed that Marvel had basically used his likeness in the Ultimate Universe without asking him first. But don't worry, it all worked out. No one got really mad, I don't think, about it, so yay. Number 1. Black Knight. Dane Whitman has such a random story in the Ultimate Universe. In the main continuity, he is a more medieval feeling hero who fights with an ancient cursed sword that causes him to kinda lose sanity and become more rabid almost each time he uses it. In the Ultimate Universe, he became more machine than man. Originally, he was a man who served in the military but became a quadriplegic after saving his fellow soldiers in battle. He would then become more of a mech with a human mind, but was considered too insane to actually be used for the team that he'd been recruited on, the West Coast Ultimates. As a result, he spent much of his life inside a stasis tube until he was intended to be used as a weapon against the Ultimates during the events of Earth 1610 Civil War story. Such a random story. What does this have to do with Black Knight at all? From 616, I don't know. Number 10. Black Widow. The Avengers in the Ultimate Universe are different from their main continuity counterparts, as while the Avengers in 616 are a team of bona fide heroes brought together by massive and often global threats, the Avengers of Earth 1610 were brought together by Nick Fury, and are often a team composed of former villains and kinda anti-heroes, people less marketable generally than 1610's Ultimates, which are like the equivalent to the 616's Avengers. Instead, the Avengers from 1610 end up becoming more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad, a team of reluctant participants who are forced to work together to complete missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. Monica Chang, however, was not one of the more criminal-based members of the team, and instead was the new Black Widow. She was given the mantle of Black Widow after the death of Natasha, who it turned out was a traitor to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Ultimates, and the USA. Monica was with the Avengers team from day one, joining them on their first mission to apprehend Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, and locate and put a stop to the Red Skull. Monica doesn't have any superpowers, but is a trained agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is a skilled spy, combatant, and is experienced with various types of firearms, though typically is known for wielding 2 pistols. While wearing her Stark suit, she also possessed enhanced strength and speed. However, she was still a normal human, and as such was still able to be killed fairly easily when she went up against the immortal Green Goblin. Poor Monica though, I feel like that whole thing kinda did her dirty because, you know, she actually survived for a long time prior to that. So it was really weird that she was like, I'm gonna go into this fight and I'm gonna be super unprepared. Hey, then you die. That's what happens. Monica should know that. Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher in the reality of Earth 1610 was a member of both Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, who fought against the Maker's Dark Ultimates, and a member of Fury's Avengers. The Punisher's powers are basically the same as his Earth 616 counterpart. In other words, he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's mostly just a man who is really skilled in his use of various firearms. He was a trained police officer with the NYPD, so it was lots of tactical training and experience. The first time he joined the Avengers, it was to protect the Vice President against Ghost Rider, but the spirit of vengeance convinced Frank to stand down, and even assist him in the end, also helping him to escape. The Punisher would also escape S.H.I.E.L.D. custody following the mission, but would later be recruited once more by Fury after he ended up in prison. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Ultimate lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, check out our Ultimate Marvel Universe playlist for more videos like this. Number 8. Red Wasp. Red Wasp initially went by the name of Swarm and was a member of the antagonistic Liberators team. She was believed to have been killed in the fight between the Liberators and the Ultimates by the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, who became giant and stepped on Swarm. However, Petra Laskov managed to survive, saved by S.H.I.E.L.D. and put into rehabilitation by them. Rehabilitation. She was made to work for them and join up with their Avengers team. They even placed an obedience chip within her to make sure that she followed orders. Rehabilitation. During her time with S.H.I.E.L.D., Petra would take up the mantle Red Wasp. She can shrink herself down to the size of an insect and can control large swarms of insects as well. However, because of her insect-like abilities, she can also be defeated using insect repellent. So, pretty cool powers, but with a pretty big weakness. Number 7. Blade. Blade was recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury, who promised to deliver him Deacon Frost in exchange for his service. Frost is the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into the creature that he is, in case you didn't know that. Blade helped to apprehend Tyrone Cash after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned he was responsible for selling off their super soldiers on the black market. Blade incapacitated Cash through hypnosis. Ooh, supernatural powers. However, despite him being part vampire, Blade is not as tough as you'd expect, especially in comparison to the tough version of the character we know from the Earth 616. Iron Man found that out when he basically crushed the poor anti-hero. Blade's time serving as part of the Ultimate Avengers may have also helped to get him on the main continuity Avengers team of Earth 616 in the future. I also gotta say, I really love Blade as an addition to the 616 Avengers. I don't know if everybody else is super enjoying that, but I'm really enjoying that. Are you enjoying that? I hope you are. Number 6. Hawkeye. But wait a minute, isn't Hawkeye a member of the Ultimates? Well, yes, he has been that too, but hey, he can do both. Hawkeye, despite being more of a bona fide hero, still had a pretty shady past, which was what made him a great candidate for the Avengers team. Nick Fury invited him to join originally when they went on the hunt for Red Skull, and Barton agreed. In fact, I believe Hawkeye actually helped to bring this team together as well. The Avengers team for him was like a Black Ops group willing to do the dirty work that the Ultimates couldn't be seen getting involved in. Often this meant the villains they went after usually ended up dead. Such was the case with Red Skull in the end. Hawkeye might just seem like a guy with a bow, and well, he is. But he's really good with that bow. He has enhanced vision, which allows him to see much farther and clearer than your average human, and he is an extremely skilled fighter, pilot, and spy. So, you know. Also, he's deadly with fingernails, so watch yourself if you're just facing him as he is. If he's got fingernails, he's got weapons. Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who became a close friend to Iron Man and ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Tony to use in his own heroic adventures. He would end up being recruited and serve on the revived Avengers project as a member of the team during their first mission, where they attempted to defeat and capture Red Skull. Rhodey happened to be armed with a nuke to use against the Red Skull as part of a last resort plan, if needed. But the Red Skull had overheard about this plan and said nuke, and so managed to disable it easily using the Cosmic Cube. Honestly, if the Red Skull didn't have the Cosmic Cube though at this time, my money would have definitely been on War Machine in this fight, because War Machine I think is pretty powerful. War Machine would also for a time gain temporary Hulk-like powers after being given some of Tyrone Cash's Hulk serum. Number 4. Nerd Hulk. While Nerd Hulk is a very powerful character in terms of his abilities being on the same level of power as Bruce Banner's Hulk from Earth 1610, he tends to end up being not so powerful in actuality when battling other people. This is because he has a tendency to hold back though. Nerd Hulk is a clone that Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's brother, created. Nerd Hulk prefers to try and resolve conflicts using logic as opposed to violence, and it is the marriage of his intellect and strength combined that holds him back from being as deadly as he could be. Still, the potential is there, and he does have access to the same amount of strength and ferocity as Banner if he'd only feel inclined to use it. Nerd Hulk was a member of the Avengers team when they were first resurrected and went after Red Skull. He would also later attempt to join the Ultimates, but he was denied membership. Sad. Poor Nerd Hulk. I love him with his little glasses. Number 3. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is like the evil brother of Tony Stark. He is the more immoral of the two when it comes to technology, but is more put together overall in comparison to his brother. Much less of a mess, if you will. This obviously made him a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, and so he ended up on the Avengers team. However, Gregory was also super smart, and was using his time working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to put certain plans into action that would allow him to take over control and eventually kind of rule the world, sort of. After Fury seemingly went rogue and Carol Danvers was also removed from the chessboard, Gregory was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to use his influence and nanite tech to cause chaos and war to erupt in other nations. Fortunately, he would be defeated by his brother Tony, who disabled his nanites with an EMP, allowing Thor to take him down. Still, for a time, Gregory was a pretty valuable member of the Avengers team, and later a formidable villain to them and to the Ultimates. And for that, he gets some bonus points. That's what I say. Gold Star Gregory Stark. That's what I call him. For evilness, I guess. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Tyrone Cash was a fairly powerful version of the Hulk, and actually was the first Hulk to exist in the Ultimate Universe. He created the Hulk serum before his protege Bruce Banner was able to, and decided to use it on himself. This gave him massive strength, and he took the name Tyrone Cash, and decided to become a criminal, using his brilliant intellect to avoid capture for longer than a decade. Previously, he'd been known as the Scientist and as Banner's mentor, Professor Leonard Williams. Eventually, Cash was apprehended and forced to join the Avengers team, and after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned that he'd betrayed them, Fury had him executed. So of course, who's the most powerful? Who could it be? Number 1. Nick Fury. When it comes to the Avengers team, Nick Fury is like the Amanda Waller of it all, in comparison to the Ultimate Avengers DC counterpart, which would likely be the Suicide Squad. Nick Fury was the one to resurrect Project Avengers, and while he claimed this was done to hunt down the Red Skull, Captain America's villainous son in this reality, it is actually believed that Fury had orchestrated Red Skull's return in order to get his job back as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and resurrect the old abandoned Avengers project. That's just so Nick Fury, I'm just saying. Nick Fury holds a lot of power not just as a master spy who often deals in secrets, but also because he was exposed to the super soldier serum and has influence over the rest of the Avengers team as their overall leader and organizer. He's just got a lot of power. He's also like got a million plans, so if you're like, oh, I know how I'll beat Nick Fury, he probably already has a plan for if you try to do that to him. That's how good he is.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Hawkeye. First appearing in Ultimates issue 7, former Olympic archer Clint Barton is pretty badass in the Ultimates. See, Hawkeye in the MCU has been kind of seen as a joke almost. Jeremy Renner did a Thinking Out Loud parody on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and he mocks the character for having just a bow and arrow. But in the Ultimates, that's more than Clint needs. Ultimate Hawkeye is no joke. He's one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D. alongside Nick Fury, of course. Now, Clint became an elite agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Black Ops division, where he partnered up with Natasha, aka Black Widow. Most of the team perished when the Chitauri sleeper agents caused some trouble, but then after that point, Hawkeye was just completely reckless. He became more and more violent with his heroic ways. Like, he would pin people to the wall with arrows, which we have not seen in the MCU yet. And yes, that includes Black Widow at one point. He gets Sabretooth right in the eye during a battle, and perhaps one of the craziest Ultimate Hawkeye moments is when he used his own fingernails to take out a group of guys. How insane is that? I always bite my nails, but now I'm gonna save them. I'm gonna save my nails in a pocket, like a weirdo. Number 9. Giant Man. Hank Pym made his first appearance in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 14. He was a genius scientist married to Janet Van Dyne, who was tasked to work on the Super Soldier Project for S.H.I.E.L.D. Now his other job was defending the planet as Giant Man, where he would grow up to 60 feet tall. Humongous dude. He got this fantastic ability after testing his mutant wife's blood. See, Henry is not a pleasant man to work with or be with in any manner, so Janet thought joining the Ultimates would maybe help him out. It didn't at all. He was jealous of Captain America and Janet's friendship, so much so that Cap was forced to kick him out of the Ultimates. And yes, a beatdown was in order first. He was a really bad guy. Giant Man, though, is extremely powerful. He was once able to hold down his own against the Incredible Hulk. But he's ruthless even as Giant Man. He bit off the Blob's head at one point. I mean, come on, what are you, Ozzy Osbourne? Stop that. He was allowed back to the Triskelion, but not as part of an Ultimate. He was a shrink for inmates like Norman Osborn, Dr. Octavius, Kraven, just a group of horrible guys, I guess. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be amazing. It's super helpful for us here at the channel. Thank you so much for your constant support. Now let's get right back into this ultimate list of ultimates. Number 8, Thor. Thor Odinson first appeared in Ultimates issue 4 with his two brothers Balder and Loki. They formed the Warriors 3 together, and Asgard won the 1,000-Year War. So far, so good. Now the three brothers participated in a tournament after the war was won, but Loki betrayed the family. Classic Loki. Even killing brother Balder while he was doing it. Later on, Thor was exiled to Midgard after Loki and his army took down Odin. So while on Earth, Thor believed he was an ordinary human, a psychiatric nurse named Thorleif Goldman, until around his 30th birthday, he started to have all these mental breakdowns, these visions, these past memories of Asgard seeping into his brain, as we all do when we approach our 30s, of course. Now, eventually his memories and powers came back and Fury recruited him into the Ultimates, but he refused to do any heroic work until the president doubled the foreign aid budget. What an actual hero in real life. There we go. Ultimate Thor is incredibly powerful. He's able to break open War Machine's armor underwater. He smashes the Hulk into the ground, and if his hammer isn't nearby, he'll just punch you into a building instead. That ought to do the trick. He looks a little different in the Ultimate. That's because of his EDI biomech suit, which is made of the harness and belt, which gave Thorleif the ability to fly again, this time with super strength. Now the hammer, of course, which has a battery that can ionize the environment, can change up the weather and do all that godly hammer stuff. And a magic belt that protects him from psychic attacks surely helps. Number 7, Wolverine. In at number 7, the Wasp. Janet Van Dyne. We talked about Hank Pym, not so jolly of a guy, so of course we have to explain more of his much nicer partner, Janet. She made her first appearance in the Ultimates issue 2. She studied at NYU, where she shared a room with Betty Ross, and that's also where she met Hank Pym for the first time. Janet felt a little odd with herself because she herself was a mutant. She didn't tell anybody but Hank. I guess when you're eating bugs and laying insectoid eggs, you're not too eager to show the world. Makes sense. So Janet worked with Hank and Bruce Banner at S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Super Soldier Research Facility, and Hank got all the credit because it was set up that he created her powers, but he used her mutant DNA secretly on the low. They were first promoted to lead the research development wing at the Ultimates, and Banner was their deputy and Betty was the communications officer. Now when it came down to the Liberators invading America, they didn't consider Janet a threat really, which huge mistake right off the bat. She shrunk down to wasp size and freed Captain America from the Triskelion cells. And then Hank Pym decided to help out a little bit. He kind of came through a tiny amount. I'm not giving him that much credit, maybe like 2% of the credit. He gave Janet a Giant Man serum in case of emergency, and this day for sure qualified as one of those. She was the one who stopped Swarm, and then after the Ultimates decided to become their own unit outside of S.H.I.E.L.D., Janet was appointed team leader. Number 6, Quicksilver. This Pietro starts off dark, being the son of Magneto and all. And in his first Ultimate appearance, he asked Magneto where Charles is, because in between his next 2 heartbeats, he'll have been taken care of. Okay, so he's bold, he's fast, and he's also in love with his sister, Wanda Lencher. How nice. / creepy. He's a protective brother to say the least. Okay. Pietro and Wanda left the Brotherhood and eventually joined the Ultimates, where they helped protect Earth from the Liberators. Now during this battle, he saved Hawkeye's life from another speedster named Hurricane. How did he save him? Oh, in a pretty brutal way. Let's talk about it. Hurricane was talking smack while fighting Hawkeye, and then Quicksilver came in and showed Hurricane what Mach 10 speeds really feels like, you know, up close and personal. Number 5, Valkyrie. Barbara Norris made her first debut in Ultimates issue 2. She has always dreamt of becoming a superhero, as most of us do in this channel, but she lacked the abilities to do so, as most of us also do on this channel. Unless you're a superhero, tell us. She was a huge fan, so she was part of the Fanatical Defenders, gaining the alias Valkyrie from her friend because Barbara was a huge fan of Thor specifically. Who isn't? When Gunnar Goldman appeared and offered her and the others actual superpowers, she gladly accepted, only it was Loki in disguise. Gotcha. Valkyrie was killed during the ultimatum wave, but her and Captain America's soul was freed from the goddess of death after Thor sacrificed his own soul. How sweet. Valkyrie was upset after this, of course, so she took Thor's hammer and attacked Magneto, even slicing off his right arm in the process. Valkyrie, Carol Danvers, and Zarda were all manipulated by the Enchantress to serve Loki, so the three of them took on all the Ultimates as prisoners. Not good, but luckily, Carol wasn't actually under this spell, so the heroes ended up escaping. Valkyrie did die fighting Loki later on, but her death allowed Thor to return to Earth and continue the fight. Valkyrie was sent to Earth temporarily from Hela to bring Loki down, and then during this trip, she got to see Thor again, where he then promised to value the lives of human beings once again. What a great trip. Number 4, Zarda. Zarda, aka Power Princess. Okay, this Greek goddess has similar origins to Hyperion. She made her first debut in Supreme Power issue 2. She kinda loves killing and going on a rampage. It's her thing. The Squadron Supreme invaded the Ultimate Universe after their world was attacked, and afterwards Zarda decided to remain in the Ultimate Universe until she later returned to her own universe and died within the Squadron Supreme. She's extremely powerful, just like Hyperion. They're the same species. They're immune to age, risk, and damage. She easily defeated the Wrecking Crew and the Hulk, and then during Ultimatum, Zarda, Mr. Fantastic, and Doctor Doom went to her own universe to get Nick Fury. He was the key to stopping Magneto, and after he was stopped, Zarda helped the remaining Ultimates and officially joined their ranks 8 months later. Lovely. Zarda's powers include super strength, superhuman durability, flight, and like I said, with her early days, including Hyperion, she has the ability to heal all wounds. And if she doesn't feel like doing that, she can also drain you of your life energy in order to power up herself. So we'll flip a coin. Number 3, the Invisible Woman. Susan Storm made her first appearance in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 1. She's the oldest child of Dr. Franklin Storm, and she inherited the brains to prove it. From her early days, she's been working at the Baxter Building, and at age 8, she built a sugar-powered rocket that accidentally destroyed her father's favorite car. Oops. So after that, she decided to put all her energy and focus into inner space biology, where she earned 4 doctorates in biochem sciences. Now, during an experiment with her partner slash lover in the End Zone, the dimensional teleporter, she got these incredible abilities alongside those other 3 fantastic folks. She can create powerful force fields and make herself and her clothing invisible to all wavelengths of light. Any guesses on who the MCU will cast as Marvel's first family? Let us know in the comments down below. Love hearing those thoughts. And in at number 2, Iron Man. Antonio Tony Stark. Okay, he made his first Ultimate appearance in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 4. He was of course born a genius, but he wasn't born an only child. He had a twin named Gregory Stark. Now at first Tony wanted to build his own empire rather than, follow in his father's footsteps, his father Howard. Now he created a company called JT Technologies. The T stood for Tony and the J stood for his girlfriend at the time, Josie Gardner. When Tony reluctantly joined his father's company after years and years of pressure, Josie left Tony. She was like, listen, I can't do it. Go and do your thing, follow your dad's footsteps. We had a dream, now the dream's crushed. So not too later, she was killed in a plane crash, no thanks to Mandarin International, which was one of the companies Howard Stark used to do business with. So Tony put his money where his mouth was, and the first thing he created was a nanotech armored suit. And after Howard Stark's death, he took over Stark Industries officially. Tony joined the Ultimates in Ultimates issue 2, he became friends with Thor, he helped Banner with his Hulk green situation, and then he saved Earth from the Chitauri, and then dated and later proposed to Natasha Romanova, aka the Black Widow. What a life. Ultimate Tony is super powerful as well. His mind was exposed to an Infinity Stone, so now Tony's neural network was able to connect to electronic systems. So you better check that recently deleted folder before getting a coffee with Ultimate Tony. Number 1, Scarlet Witch. Wanda Lensher, the Scarlet Witch. Okay, she was the daughter of Magneto and sister/lover of Quicksilver. What a weird family. She began her team days on the side of evil. She was a passive member of Magneto's Brotherhood, and after his apparent death, the team started to rescue X-Men from Weapon X. We love a change of heart. Now she led them for a little while, but at the same time she was making sure things were cool with Charles Xavier. She wanted to keep the peace between the both sides. That's nice. But when Magneto did return, her and her brother/lover ran for it. Because they were mutants, they were initially part of the Black Ops team for the Ultimates. Wanda died like 3 times in the Ultimates, I swear. An Ultron unit killed her with a specific bullet directed to her DNA, and then later she returned, but it turned out that she was just Quicksilver's imagination and she was still dead. But then she returned another time to tell Pietro to go to Egypt to find Magneto, but she wasn't actually real, as Mr. Sinister in Apocalypse later revealed that she was just an illusion. Nothing can keep this witch down. Now when it comes to powers, Wanda is packing the heat. Probability manipulation and magic make her Black Ops days pretty smooth.
Number 10, Maximus the Mad. I just like the look of Maximus the Mad here. We don't get to see too much of him or the other Inhumans, but what I like about him and them is kind of just that. They're more alluring when they're kept mysterious. Maximus, in case you didn't know, is the brother to Black Bolt. In the Earth 616 universe, he is known as Maximus the Mad, as I believe he's also known here. He is often depicted as such in terms of his appearance in the 616 continuity, and is also made to look somewhat more flamboyant in comparison to his Earth 1610, his Ultimate Universe counterpart. I do love that Maximus just looks like a normal dude in the Ultimate Universe, because also I just feel like just because you're mad doesn't mean you look different, you know what I mean? You just look normal. I think that actually makes him more frightening to me as well, that he just looks so normal, so average. Especially among the rest of the Inhumans, who all look pretty freaky, stand out, and honestly somewhat monstrous here. This more bleak take on the whole group in the Ultimate Universe makes me want to see a film version of them that was more of like a supernatural horror. Especially considering they consider Adelan to actually be like a heaven here, yet it's so dark. I believe based on this depiction, there could be promise in something like a supernatural horror film version of them. Number 9, Gregory Stark. Sorry Arno, move over, Gregory is here. I like Arno Stark, okay, but Gregory was a pretty cool villain to have, and he wasn't the secret brother of Iron Man either. Gregory is actually not just known, he's often more well liked than Tony is in the Ultimate Universe, at least initially. Tony is seen as being a bit of a loose cannon in comparison to his older twin brother, you see, who constantly has things way more together and is also super wicked smart. But that also works well for Gregory's character, as he also turns out to be, you guessed it, a bad guy. Of course, no one can be that good. We should have known. Gregory manipulated S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to get full control of it, and when all the pieces were in play, basically attempted to take over the world. He had to be taken out by Tony Stark, but in a much more permanent way than Tony when he dealt with Arno in the Earth 616 reality. Tony, in part, actually helped to kill his brother. He used an EMP to disrupt his nanites, which made Gregory critically vulnerable to an attack from Thor. Ouch. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to head on over to Facebook to show us some love, where you can give us a follow, a like, and check out all the cool content we have over there. Number 8, Crystal. I really love the original Crystal, especially in terms of her appearance, but I also do love the super rebellious vibes we get from Earth 1610 Ultimate Crystal in this narrative. Here, Crystal is still the little sister of Medusa, but this group of Inhumans, Medusa included, are even less likely to mingle with humans. They simply want to live a completely separate and simple life, which bothers Crystal, who it seems is searching for something more, something outside of her own family. Acting out, she runs away from her people, not eager to play the loyal member of the royal court, and not fond of her fiance, Black Bolt's brother, Maximus the Mad. Yeah, they're engaged in this reality. She runs into the Fantastic Four, and in so doing kind of reveals to them the secret location of Adelan as they pursue her after she is retrieved by her people. Crystal ends up deciding to stay with the Inhumans too, despite her unhappiness, which I also think is an interesting choice, and it gets me wanting to know more about both Crystal and the Inhumans in this universe. Cause like the Fantastic Four were also just like, you come chill with us, but she's like, nah, this is how it's gotta be, even though I definitely was not super here for this, but I still gotta stick with my fam. Number 7, Nick Fury. The Nick Fury of the Ultimate Universe Earth 1610 isn't perfect. In fact, he can kinda seem like he's being a butt a lot of the time, but in reality, it's just that Nick Fury often doesn't trust people. He keeps his plans and reasons behind them close to his chest, and while you might not understand them and therefore think he's callous, he's often just trying to make the hard call. Nick Fury has some flaws, I'll grant you, especially if we're talking about his relationship with his ex-wife and everything that apparently went wrong there. But this version of the character would become so beloved that he actually go on to inspire an Earth 616 counterpart in Nick Fury Jr., and of course would inspire the version of the character we saw up on the big screen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he was portrayed by the one and only Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson in fact also served as inspiration for the 1610 counterpart in the comics when it came to his appearance, and Mr. Jackson was actually the character's first pick of course, when asked in canon who would be best to portray him in a film. Number 6. Black Bolt. Black Bolt is already menacing over on Earth 616, at least I would say in modern comics he is, but on Earth 1610 he is really menacing. We see Black Bolt for an even shorter time than Crystal, but honestly it only adds to the mystery of the character, making him appear more intimidating. The colors by June Chung during his appearance in Ultimate Fantastic Four Annual Issue number 1 really help the character to pop as well, and the pencils by Jay Lee also add to the presence of his appearance. He might not say much, but he really doesn't need to here. This is a very muscular, dark, and yet blindingly bright Black Bolt with the white lines of his costume reminding me of lightning. Black Bolt simply appears basically to destroy Atalan so they might find a new secret home, as their current one in the Himalayas has been revealed to the FF, and you know, it's supposed to be secret. Aside from that, he also communicates how disappointed he is in Crystal. Honestly, I would not want this Black Bolt to be disappointed in me. I would be like walking on eggshells with him if he was like, I'm slightly disappointed in you, Amanda. Or you know, just stared at me and looked disappointed, because he couldn't really say that. He can only shout, well, he does shout to destroy Atalan, basically that he's disappointed, so there you go. Even the rebellious Crystal seems to be affected by Black Bolt's guilt tripping though, agreeing to remain with her people despite being offered a place among the humans and the Fantastic Four. I mean, he doesn't even shout to destroy Atalan. What am I saying? He like just says a word. That's also how powerful this version of him is. He's like, I'll just say a word, Crystal, your disappointment, and then it all just wipes away. Number 5. Medusa. Honestly, I would say pretty much all of the Inhumans at this point of the Ultimate Universe are the coolest versions around, hence why I have so many of them on this list, or at least, you know, one of the coolest versions of the Inhumans around. I would say the coolest though. I think they are the coolest. Medusa is no exception, possibly having my most favorite redesign when it comes to her character. The Medusa of Earth 1610 is still Black Bolt's queen, but seems to have been named for her familiarity and appearance to the Gorgon of mythos. Medusa. This version of Medusa has snakes for hair. She also happens to be steadfastly loyal to her people. As I said before, we don't get to see too much of the Inhumans, but we do know that Medusa believes the Inhumans are basically superior to humans, and that distance should be maintained between their race and the humans in order to basically preserve their own culture and their own abilities. Medusa also expresses here that she has come to love her husband and accept him for who he is, despite the fact that he can never really show his love for her, at least not vocally. Which apparently is like a really big thorn in her side, because she seems to be very upset about it. She's like, Crystal, get over the fact that you don't want to hang out with us. Like, Black Bolt can't even talk to me, okay? If I can deal with that, you can deal with Maximus, okay? Let's just figure it out. Number 4. Hawkeye. Hawkeye actually has to be one of the coolest heroes in these comics, and no, I am not joking. The way they revamped this character was so impactful that the version of the character was a major influence on their MCU counterpart when it came time to pen down what that Hawkeye would be like. Clint Barton in the comics is known for being a hot mess typically, but in the Ultimate Universe, he was much more secretive, but also had a family. Tragically, his family ends up being found and killed in the process of enemies trying to hunt him down. When he is captured and severely mistreated by said captors, what does he do? He doesn't hang his head, he doesn't give up, he escapes, using his fingernails, his freaking fingernails as weapons. It doesn't get more badass than that. This Hawkeye does not even need arrows to be a deadly threat. I don't often get to hype Hawkeye here on Top 10 Nerd, so I just want to say thank you, Ultimate Universe, for giving me an opportunity to do so, because I do like Clint Barton, but we don't often get to put him at the top of these lists, or near the top, so yay. Number 3, Miles Morales. I know this is kind of a hot take when it comes to Spider-Man. I know there's some people in the comments who are gonna be like, I think Peter Parker is the best version. And that's fine, that's fair enough. But I really love Miles Morales in this role. Now, we do also have a Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe of 1610, but he doesn't really do much to stand out for me in comparison to his main continuity counterpart. And don't get me wrong, I do love Peter Parker, but Miles is kind of like a breath of fresh air in some ways in comparison to the age-old hero. Why? Well, Peter has a tendency to be like really hard on himself, and aside from that, he's surrounded by tragedy at times. Honestly, there are runs where it feels like every time Peter like turns a corner, a new tragedy might just be like awaiting him around that corner. Miles actually has a family still living, and while he did lose his mom in the Ultimate Universe, it never really felt like a constant unresolved loss, like the death of Peter's Uncle Ben or his first love Gwen Stacy on Earth 616. And Rio, Miles' mom, is actually back now that the 1610 Miles has been permanently displaced, taking up residence in the 616 reality, and his family obviously is there with him. Miles also just has super cool powers. On top of much of what Peter has going on, Miles can also camouflage himself, and he has Venom Blast powers, so gotta give it to him. Sorry. Number 2, Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is such an underrated character in the Marvel Ultimate Universe. On the Earth of 616, Gwen is, well, she's dead. Or she's probably dead. She might be showing up again soon, apparently, but it's probably a clone or like a trick or something. I don't believe it's the original Gwen Stacy. She's been dead and gone for many years. I don't think she's ever really gonna come back. In the Ultimate Universe, Gwen also kinda dies, but also kinda doesn't. She's killed by Carnage, not an alien symbiote, but kind of a lab-made one in this reality, and in essence, her consciousness becomes merged with it, meaning that Carnage becomes Gwen, and Gwen becomes Carnage. So yeah, as freaky as that sounds, in the Ultimate reality, Gwen Stacy lives on as Carnage. It's freaky, and it's cool. Well, you might think this is the same as a clone Gwen in the 616 universe. It's not really. Because 1, she has the power of Carnage, and 2, she is an 100% exact biological duplicate who also possesses Gwen's mind up to the point of her death, which, not all Gwen clones in 616 have, allowing Gwen to continue to grow and develop as she would have as a human, but simply with superpowers. Well, she only has superpowers for a bit, sadly. She has them until Eddie Brock's Venom assimilates Carnage, leaving her devoid of the symbiote and her powers going forward. I kinda wish she had stayed as Carnage, but it's fine. When she was Carnage though, I think that was super cool. Even though I know it was freaking her out, I thought she could have maybe become the new Carnage. That would have been neat. Number 1, The Maker. The Maker is the alternate version of Reed Richards. I actually have always felt that Richards might make a better villain than a hero, and The Maker seems to have been this thought made manifest. Living proof. Well, fictional living proof. The Maker initially started out as a hero, leader of the team known as the Fantastic Four. However, in the Ultimate Universe, his and Sue's future of marital bliss was not as much guaranteed. And in fact, after the tragedy of Ultimatum and Sue Storm turning down his marriage proposal, Richards got a different perspective on life, which inevitably turned him into a villain. In this universe, Reed had a rough childhood, and part of where his villainy started was in turning on his family. A family that had mistreated him as he saw it for years. Yeah, in this reality, Reed commits patricide and matricide to get back at his parents. Very counter to his Earth 616 alternate, and that version's relationship with his family, which much better than this one. Number 10, Tony and Natasha. Yep, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Iron Man and Black Widow are an item. But what's worse, Black Widow turns out to be working as a double agent and betrays the team in Ultimates 2. Turns out she was working with the Liberators. This all happens just as Tony and Natasha are preparing to tie the knot. Fortunately, Tony is able to apprehend Natasha, stop her, and turn her over to the authorities, but not before she manages to kill his longtime butler and friend Jarvis, and get all of Hawkeye's family killed and him captured. Tony finds himself distraught, and matters are made even worse after Black Widow's capture and later on her death, when a very intimate and personal video the two made together is leaked to the public. Yikes. Number 9, Actual Cannibal Hulk. Hulk in the Ultimate Universe was a much more gruesome version of himself. He was depicted as being a lot more violent, even killing people when he went into a rage. However, this is the Ultimate, so even this more violent and uncontrolled take on his character was not enough. Hulk wouldn't just lose control and kill people, he also had a habit of eating the people he killed as well. I mean, I know he's meant to be a monstrous figure even on Earth 616, but it feels like they took it a little too far here. Also, what's up with the Ultimate Universe and cannibalism? That's like a thing that just keeps coming up. Number 8, the one true enemy of the great Charles Xavier. Stairs! It was something that hadn't really been done when it came to defeating Professor X, throwing him down some stairs. But there was also probably a reason for this, because I mean, it's just not a thing that needs to happen in the comics, and yet nothing was considered off the table in Ultimates. This is the moment, by the way, that is featured in our thumbnail for this video, and you might be wondering, hold on, wait a minute, is that Wolverine throwing Charles down the stairs? And fear not, true believer, at least they didn't steep that low. That's actually Mr. Sinister, and yeah, he looks a little different in the Ultimate Universe. if you're like, but where's his cape and the things? And it looks different here. Number 7, Liberators. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I like the idea of the Liberators. It was more the way that this all went down with them in the end, and the way that these international heroes, but villains to the Ultimates, were portrayed. The Liberators were a team of superpowered folks from around the globe who had come together to defeat the Ultimates so as to even the playing field on a global level for the rest of the world. Basically, these characters thought that the USA was becoming too powerful and was messing things up for other countries with their superhero team. This could have been an interesting story, actually, in terms of like global international politics, but instead it just became about how every other country was inferior to the US, with their heroes, the Ultimates, winning the day simply because they were kind of deemed superior. And I'm pretty sure there's a line in there that communicates almost verbatim that sentiment. Number 6, Black Panther is Steve Rogers? There is a time that Black Panther is Steve Rogers in these comics. What went down is that basically Black Panther was recruited to the Ultimates but didn't really want to join the team. I mean, that's a whole other story that is pretty weird and problematic. He was kind of made to join the team against his will. On Nick Fury's orders, Black Panther, however, was also not allowed to leave or ever return to his home and see his family in Wakanda. Steve had been training Black Panther and he felt bad for T'Challa, so he decided to basically take Black Panther's place so that he could return home to visit his family. Temporarily, of course. At least, it seemed as though the sub-in was meant to be something temporary. It was implied in the comics that Black Panther would basically go visit his family for a while, and then he'd return to relieve Steve. That isn't what happened, though, and instead Steve remained as Black Panther until eventually he just went back to being Captain America again, and Black Panther sort of seemingly disappeared off the team without any explanation. He does come back, I think, for one mission, and then he quits. But, yeah, it's also kind of weird that he quits. I guess things changed and he could quit at that point? Yeah, it's strange. Another one of the strangest moments in terms of this story is when Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, seemingly recognizes that Steve is actually Black Panther because of the way he moves. Apparently no one else can move like Steve Rogers. Number 5, Blob eats the Wasp. During the events of Ultimatum, a lot of awful things went down. One of those things was the death of the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne. She was for a time the leader of the Ultimates and actually proved to be a quite capable, resourceful, and powerful member of the team, but none of that could save her from the Ultimate Wave. Janet was one of the heroes to be killed during the Ultimate Wave, and her body was found by Hawkeye and Giant Man. The worst part wasn't even that she died, but instead was the aftermath of that. Hawkeye and Giant Man found the Wasp's corpse, which was being violently torn apart and eaten by the Brotherhood member, the Blob. Ew. Why so much cannibalism, though? Number 4, Magneto kills everyone. Normally, I wouldn't have a problem with Magneto killing people. After all, he's a major X-Men villain, and to have Magneto tell the story, most of the people that he kills, they deserve it. They themselves are usually murderers in some way. It's what makes him such a compelling villain, and at times an anti-hero. Right now, he's gone full hero in the comics, which means that he really holds people up to high standards in Krakoa when it comes to their law about not killing humans. After all, he knows what it's like to feel justified in disposing of human enemies, and even he is willing to agree that overall it's just a bad idea. So there's really no way of finding justification if that's your crime in Krakoa right now. In Ultimates, Magneto, however, goes from being Professor X's friend and partner in mutant team building and safe space creating to thinking that mutants are basically better than humans and believing that humans should either serve mutants or completely be exterminated. Does believing that you belong to a superior race sound like anything else to you? Magneto kills billions of people in the pursuit of this belief, which, considering his history as a victim and survivor of the camps in World War II, is pretty shocking and feels out of character. And if you're wondering, well, is that still a thing in Ultimates? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's still established in Ultimates, so yeah. Number 3, Wanda and Pietro. Initially, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver had a similar relationship to their 616 counterparts, with Pietro being established as just an overprotective brother. Ultimates then took this a step further, with it being kind of a joke that they were maybe like a little too close, with them even being presented as being overly flirty with one another. But eventually, this was then taken to the next level. A level we probably never should have gone to, where the brother and sister duo were in a full-blown romantic and intimate relationship with one another, and Wolverine even caught them being intimate. And this was something that many fans felt was taking their relationship way too far. Pietro even is considered a rival when it comes to anyone else competing for Wanda's affections. I love how Earth 1610 was about trying completely different things with characters, and yet the close siblings were simply just brought too close together. I mean, they could have done something really different with these two and made them two estranged siblings or people that were unrelated to each other. That's something that would really be breaking new ground. Where's my story where they were split up at birth and so they never knew about the other one and then they find their long lost twin? That could be a cool story. Number 2, Ultimates 3. Many of these worst moments that have been laid out before you today come to us from Ultimates 3, which is where the wheels really began to fall off the Ultimates train. I mean, Ultimates 2 also had its problems, but I don't know if there were quite as many as Ultimates 3. Ultimates would later be relaunched by Jonathan Hickman and Asad Ribish in hope to save it, but the damage had already been done. The line was doomed to die and would die during the incursions, with the worlds colliding and being rolled into one giant ball of fun that we'd come to know as Doom's Battle World. Of course, then later it'd be brought back, so nah. Number 1, Ultimatum. What could possibly be worse than a brother and sister in a romantic relationship and Ultimates 3, where many problematic stories either got worse or got started? How about the thing that simply straight up killed the Ultimate Universe, or at least felt like it tried to? Ultimatum. Ultimatum was the crossover event that caused mass devastation to the universe and the world, wiping out many of the characters that we'd come to know and love, or at the very least tolerate. Jeff Loeb was basically given the green light by Marvel to kill off all characters who were too similar to their Earth 616 counterparts to really shake up the Ultimate Universe. What ended up happening as a result was many people, heroes, and villains dying due to their heads being blown up or torn off, having an overly gruesome and violent end. Then there were deaths that were never even shown of major characters who died in the Ultimate Wave. And finally, there were also tons of characters whose corpses were eaten after or during their death, or who ended up tortured to death. It was just an overly violent mess of an event with death after death, till you became just basically numb to what was going on. Ultimatum is also the event where Magneto decided to basically go nuts and kill billions of people. He would snap Professor X's neck and then would later have his own head blown off by Cyclops' optic blasts. Like I said, just so many heads being blown off. It makes my head want to explode. Number 10, Double Death Peter. I don't actually have any issues with Spider-Man dying. I don't wish Peter Parker ill. I just feel like death is such a finite ending that sometimes it can be nice to have that in stories so that sometimes we can just move forward as opposed to getting stuck on repeat, stuck in a loop. What I take issue with though when it comes to Peter's deaths in Ultimates, because yeah, I feel like he definitely got more than one, was that he was killed off kind of suddenly or unceremoniously, which meant he had to be brought back again to do it right. And then after all that, we also find out that he's pretty much immortal. Granted, this does also help to make his multiple deaths make sense and give us a nice, neat little ending for Peter as he passes the torch to Miles. But still, that first death, woo, it was a doozy. During Ultimatum, it seems as though Spider-Man, after being forced to fight his nightmares, gets caught up in the midst of a huge explosion initiated by an equally frustrated Hulk. Of course, overall, he appears to survive, but it seems that the intention here originally was to kill him, and that this death was simply retconned away. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I really don't like the argument between Kitty and MJ at the beginning. They're like, I love him. Well, I love him too. Oh my goodness, be quiet. I'm all about love, but that's so, I don't know, just something about it just grates me. Don't like it. You couldn't possibly understand how I feel because I love him. No, well, I love him, so you couldn't possibly understand how I feel. Ugh. Number 9, Magneto kills Professor X. While this might not seem like such a strange and unsettling thing, keep in mind that Magneto and Charles are often presented in the comic book world as being opponents, but still being friends. While this might not seem like such a strange and unsettling thing, keep in mind that Magneto and Charles are often presented in the comic book world as being opponents, but still being friends. And here, for a long while, they were actually allies on Earth 1610. History aside though, this death is a brutal one, mostly because of how easy Magneto makes it seem. Magneto kills Charles by simply breaking his neck. He just snaps it. He doesn't even go all magnetism on him, though he does do that at other times in the Ultimate Universe. I don't know what exactly Charles did to deserve his life in this reality. I mean, it's not like he ignored the growing sentience of a training room who also happened to be a mutant when he claimed to be fighting for all mutant rights, right? Oh wait. Well, you know, at least he never lied to the X-Men about it. Oh wait. Number 8. Too sexy? Question mark? Is there such a thing? When it comes to the X-Men in this reality, yes, there might just be something as too sexy. And I'm all for sexy. Here, the X-Men were notorious for being overly sexualized. There are a lot of overt sexual moments that happen with our mutants who seem to be weirdly horny a lot of the time. Look, I'm not saying that heroes and villains can't be sexy, or that they can't be sexual. This is comics after all. Sexiness is a big part of the industry and the allure and the history. But even for comics, this feels like a bit much. This also extended beyond X-Men and other characters, with Natasha and Tony's special tape, and Carol and Tony's love-hate relationship that helped them work through some mutual frustration with each other professionally. When it comes to X-Men, we also learned that Wolverine slept with Magneto's wife, Magda, which made people question who Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's father really was. To add on to that, Wolverine then saw Wanda and Pietro together getting intimate, which is really weird, but it's especially really weird if Wolverine seems to be their dad maybe, or if that's even like a question. Bottom line, I think the thing that most frustrates me about the sexiness in Ultimates is that it feels like it did a lot of this just for the shock factor. Like, it wasn't even about like sexiness for story or like sexiness for sexiness. It was like sexiness so that people would be like, oh, gasp, what am I reading? Number 7, Giant Man eats the Blob. Everybody is eating everybody in Ultimates. I don't know what it is with this world and cannibalism. I guess to be like really edgy, that is one of the final ingredients that you need. I don't know. And you gotta have it in spades, I guess. On part 1, we talked about how Blob was caught devouring the Wasp, and in revenge for the Blob's actions, Hank decided to give him a taste of his own medicine when he found him. As Giant Man, Hank pays the Blob back in kind by killing him through, you guessed it, eating him, biting off his head, clean off. Ugh. Or well, it doesn't look too clean, but you know what I mean. The other awful thing about this gruesome death is that it doesn't really give us even enough time to process the awfulness that was Janet being eaten just like a few moments ago. The story just rushes us through to the next like excessively violent and vengeful moment. And friends, if you occasionally love to hate things, and I know you do. This is fandoms. This is what we do sometimes. We lovingly hate things. Be sure to show that love to hate by giving this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much if you've already done it. It really does help us out, so thank you. Number 6, Death of Cyclops. Quicksilver ends up assassinating Cyclops because he wants to carry on in his father's footsteps. No, Quicksilver, no! Did you not just see what happened during Ultimatum? It wasn't good. We do not need more hardcore Magneto. It was a mess. The other thing that was really weird about this death is that it didn't really lead to anything for Quicksilver. He said he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, continue his dad's work, create a new brotherhood, but nothing big really ever comes of this. Like, I mean, he creates a new brotherhood, but it's just like a lot of running around without much going on. There's no through line here for this narrative. Number 5, Mr. Sinister. Like, I know Mr. Sinister is kind of a crazy dude, but I feel like we made him crazy in a less interesting way here in Ultimates, if that makes sense. Instead of being obsessed with evolution and teaming up with Apocalypse in order to improve himself, adopting the name Sinister because it's what his wife called him, Nathaniel Essex was instead someone who worked at Oscorp working on a potential new super soldier serum. Because in Ultimates, everything comes back to super soldiers. Now, I personally feel that Mr. Sinister is lesser than in comparison to his 616 counterpart, who is both fabulous, wicked, ruthless, and strangely sane for someone who is so deranged. He's both sane and insane at the same time. I don't know how he does it. But what really irks me is how downplayed and modernized Sinister's look is here in Ultimates. I have 3 words: needs more capes. Number 4, Ultron loves Wanda? One of the weirdest things to happen in Ultimates was when it was actually just a straight up thing that Ultron loved Wanda. Some people have theorized even in the MCU that Vision only loves Wanda because Ultron did, but me, personally, I like to try and distance myself as far as possible from this really weird and strange plot when it comes to theories. I'm not saying that robots don't deserve love. They do deserve love. But in Ultron's case, maybe they don't. I don't know. Ultron saw Pietro as a major competitor for Wanda's affections. For more on that, see part 1 of this list. And when Ultron realized he couldn't have her, he decided no one would, killing her instead. He killed her because he loved her. This excuse in my mind never makes for a great love story or plot, by the way. Don't kill people because you love them. What is that? What is that? Number 3, World War X. I mean, this as an idea on paper seems pretty cool, but where it falls apart is, well, pretty much at the beginning. The whole issue is that the reason for these two groups wanting to actually go to war just doesn't really feel, I don't know, justified. Basically what goes down here is you have Kitty Pryde ruling over Utopia and Jean Grey ruling over Xi'an, or Tian. Not sure if I'm saying that right, but I promise I'm trying. It isn't even really explained how Jean Grey came to be the one in power. She was just appointed to take over by the surviving Zorn brother who died somehow, I think? I don't know what happened there. Jean wants Utopia and Xi'an to become one mutant nation, but Kitty isn't interested in joining. Jean says she doesn't want a war, but insists that Kitty started it, so now there has to be one, even though she doesn't want one? All because Kitty killed some androids left to her by the Zorn brothers. Yeah. And from there, it just gets more ridiculous and weird. I like the idea of a mutant versus mutant faction fight, but this was a weird one. I think you gotta really make it justified, like with Cyclops versus Wolverine, when they kind of had like two different ideologies on how to approach leadership, and then it was like, which team are you? That makes sense to me. Number 2, extreme domestic dispute. Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne have always had a troubled marriage in the comics. Ever since that fateful panel where Hank dramatically and intentionally struck Janet, Hank has been thought of as a troubled man who is more inclined to hurt the ones he loves and thus drives them away. This panel was intended by editor Jim Shooter to actually be redrawn, as he felt the moment should actually be an accident, not something intentional. However, they ran out of time to redo it, and to this day, this action has haunted the character of Hank Pym. So much so that on Earth 1610, it was simply imagined of how much worse he could possibly be to poor Janet. They were like, how worse can this get? Here she tries to stand by Hank even after their relationship gets really rough. It gets really bad when she and Hank end up in a fight with one another, with Janet using her powers against him. While she is shrunk down, Hank then sends his army of ants after her, almost killing Janet as she goes into anaphylactic shock from all the ant stings and bites. It's just terrible. Number 1, blood and gore. Another issue that people had with the Ultimate Universe, just all the blood and gore that we saw here, and more specifically all the needless blood and gore. The Ultimate Universe took violence to a new level, and while I'm actually a fan of a gory scene when it holds meaning, many felt that much of what we saw was gratuitous. It was there for the shock factor. Number 10, Marvel Zombies. I wouldn't say I hate Marvel Zombies by any means, but it is a world that I'm often reluctant to visit. And yet, here I go, talking about it again. Thank you so much for this, Ultimates. Thank you. I love talking about Marvel Zombies. The alternate universe of Marvel Zombies was actually introduced in the Ultimate line. We learned of this alternate reality when the Fantastic Four of 1610 would be forced into a confrontation with the reality-hopping zombie versions of themselves from Earth Z, aka 2149, who first appeared in Ultimate Fantastic Four in issue 21. Marvel Zombies is a pretty cool idea for an alternate Marvel world, to be honest, especially in the early 2000s when zombies were all the rage with the success of both The Walking Dead and Shaun of the Dead. Honestly, I really love Shaun of the Dead. I think it's one of my favorite movies. However, Marvel Zombies has also now been done to death, or undeath if you will. Often I found it zombie stories suffer from feeling the need to use excessive gore in order to sell us. Like sometimes happens with the Ultimates. There are times when it feels as though it's just all about shocking the readers. And I don't mind being shocked, but I like being shocked when it's for a purpose, not just being shocked because be shocked by comics, you know what I mean? Number 9, Jean Grey and Wolverine's son? I gotta say, I don't mind Jean Grey becoming a villain in stories, but there are some strange things that go on with her character in terms of motivations on Earth 1610 that do bother me. A big one being the flirty moments that we see between her and Wolverine's son, Jimmy Hudson. For those who aren't aware, Jimmy was the son of Wolverine who was raised by a war buddy of Logan's and his family. Jimmy wouldn't learn until he was older of his true heritage and the fact that he was Logan's biological son. On Earth 1610, Jean Grey spent some time initially dating Wolverine before she ended up with Cyclops, and of course before Wolverine died. Cyclops actually also later dies. Jean just can't catch a break, I guess, in terms of her partners staying alive. Her being the former lover of Wolverine, though, is what makes so many of her flirtatious moments with Jimmy so uncomfortable and weird. He's the son of her ex. Like, what is happening? Also, maybe not everybody got those vibes, but I definitely got those vibes, and I want to be like, what's going on? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving these lists, all the parts of them, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I know sometimes in fandoms we love to hate things, and I feel like that's sometimes what these lists are about. But that's okay. It can be fun, as long as it's all in good fun, and we can respect the cool stuff that we know about in the comics as well. Number 8, character motivations. Another thing that seemed to happen in the world of Ultimates was that some characters' motivations seemed to, make less sense than in 616. There were characters who were deemed evil for no real reason, or people who won fights without much explanation or justification for how they beat down someone who was kind of intended to be at their level or possibly above it. A lot of people wished others ill for strange reasons or did things that completely betrayed what they claimed to believe in. Of course, hypocrisy in the world is a very real thing, but I'm not sure we see hypocrisy every day that is quite at the level of what we saw with some characters in Ultimates. Number 7, Blue Tony. One of the weirdest things about Ultimates has to have been the initial origin story that we got for Tony Stark. Originally, Tony Stark was given a very different backstory from his 616 counterpart. He was born as one big brain. Due to his mother suffering from an accident while she was pregnant with him, his genetic makeup was affected and he developed neural tissue throughout his entire body. Hence why I say he's a big brain, despite the fact that, you know, he appears human. So just to be clear, he doesn't look just like a big brain. He looks like a person, but he is a big brain, technically. Tony would evidently be hyper intelligent because of this alteration to his genetics, but he would also have hypersensitive skin. Even the air just touching him felt like intense burns all over his body. Because of this, his father created an armor for him to wear and to protect Tony and allow him to exist semi-normally. This liquid armor his father created also turned his skin blue, hence me calling this point Blue Tony, because he was blue. This version of Tony would get 2 miniseries, but his origins would end up being one of the many things to be retconned away. Number 6, retcons. Retcons on retcons on retcons. Would you like some retcons with that retcon? When it comes to Ultimate Universe, there are so many retcons, it can actually be hard to even keep up with all of them. And so many things were just so bizarre that we might not even remember them as existing. Never mind them being retconned out of existence. Seriously, with Ultimates, I really need that retcon button. Friends, I need a button at my desk that I can just smash every time I find a retcon, so I can have like a counter of all the ones. And never mind the retcons we may have forgotten, there are also the ones that we do remember, jarringly so, because they were never even justified or explained. The retcons that just randomly showed up and you were like, wait, what's happening now? Did I miss something? No, it was just never explained. Or the ones that their explanations were so strange and far-fetched that we simply struggle to remember them because we're like, that doesn't even make sense, so I'm not even gonna put that in my brain. There is, for example, Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch's death, but then she came back to life, her brother Pietro's death, who also miraculously actually comes back to life. I don't even know if that one was ever explained. Black Panther becoming Steve Rogers, but then just going back to being Captain America without much explanation of what happened to T'Challa afterwards. We know he went home, and so it kind of gets a little fuzzy there. And of course, we just talked about Blue Tony as well. That origin was retconned actually to be the plot of an anime series based on Iron Man that existed in the universe. Because why not? I mean, at least that's a reason that could make sense. Although, if you owned all of those 2 miniseries that were Blue Tony, you'd be like, what did I buy? I bought something that's apparently about an anime now in the world. How would you feel about that? Number 5, dropped plots. Within Ultimates, there were also tons of covers and teases for plots that never really led us anywhere. Hulk was apparently going to join the X-Men, T'Challa was meant to join the Ultimates, but he randomly left and then he never really returned. Quicksilver intended to follow in his father's footsteps, but never really built to any great huge plot. Magneto was killed by Cyclops, but then randomly just shows back up again to console his son, and then I don't think we ever see him again after that, so that's confusing. Various covers teased at scenarios that simply never came to pass. And I'm not talking about alternate covers either, I am talking about main covers. Comic book covers are supposed to give us an indication of the story to come, the story that's inside the comic, a hint at something that exists within that issue. Not completely mislead us with promises of grandeur, showing us scenarios or team-ups that just never happen. And with Ultimates, this was sometimes simply the way. For a world that was meant to be made less confusing by the fact that it didn't have years of continuity to deal with, the Ultimate Universe became really messy pretty fast. Number 4, Kitty and MJ fight over Spider-Man. This whole fight in Ultimatum just, it kills me. While Peter Parker in 616 is often either shipped with Mary Jane Watson, Gwen Stacy, or Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, in 1610, he, for a time, dated Kitty Pryde, who was about the same age as Peter, so it makes sense, it's kinda cute. And the two also teamed up together fighting crime as supers, which also, cute. However, Kitty and Peter wouldn't end up staying together, and eventually they would break up, and he'd end up more predictably with MJ. Despite the fact that Kitty and Peter ended things pretty amicably, we see Kitty and MJ arguing over who loves Peter more during Ultimatum. Just another reason to consider Ultimatum one of the lowest points of the Ultimate line. There is something so annoying and so ridiculous about these two girls bickering over who really loves Peter the most, especially as the world is like falling apart around them. I'm like, what's happening? Why are we having this conversation right now? Why are we having this conversation at all? I guess it's also just like, I'm like, I don't think that's what would be happening with these characters. In my mind, I'm like, I don't believe it. Number 3, Jonathan Hickman. One of the worst things to happen to the Ultimate Universe would probably be Jonathan Hickman leaving it. But also, maybe just Jonathan Hickman in general. Hickman was one of the creatives called in to help revive the Ultimate line after it had been murked by Ultimatum. In the end, the creative paramedics would not be able to save it, despite breathing new and exciting life into it. In fact, years down the line, after Hickman had left Ultimates, he'd kind of also be the one to destroy it, with his Avengers run where we learn about the incursions and where eventually the Time Runs Out storyline would take place. However, the Ultimate line might be gone, but the Ultimate Universe would be brought back to life later on. In fact, actually, Hickman is still a huge Maker fan, and even has been intertwining the 1610 version of Reed Richards' Children of Tomorrow into his current X-Men run and the world of X-Men with the Children of the Vault. So it's like a mixed bag with Jonathan Hickman. He's like the worst thing to have left, the worst thing to have happened because he killed it. But he also, obviously, I feel like he loves Ultimates. I feel like it does hold a special place in his heart, because I feel like he loves a lot of the characters there. So, yeah, I don't know. I love it. Who doesn't love the Maker, though? Am I right? He's just so cool. Such a freaky guy. Number 2, Wolverine creeps on MJ. One of the weirdest things to happen in the Ultimate Universe takes place during a case of the body swaps. Wolverine and Spider-Man wake up one day in one another's bodies without any idea of how they got there. Just like in the main continuity reality of Earth 616, these two don't really get along in the Ultimate Universe. They end up discovering what happened and making contact with one another, planning to meet up and basically figure out like how to swap back or like what's going on. But after this all gets resolved, we also learn that Wolverine, who is not just an adult man, by the way, but potentially a super old adult man due to his healing factor, attempted, while in Peter's body, to make very intimate and adult moves on Mary Jane, Peter's girlfriend, who here is also a teenager. Ew! Like, I know you have a thing for redheads, bub, but stick to redheaded adults, not teenagers. Ugh. Gross. Number 1, Ultimate Doom. Doom was such a mess in the Ultimate Universe, just because of all the ever-developing retcons about which Doom was the real Doom. Victor Van Dame was our Doom of Earth 1610, but we later learned that actions we believed were him were actually a Doom bot, and that he'd also actually been replaced for a time by Mary Storm. He was like basically going into alternate realities. It's a lot. If you thought Doom of Earth 616 with all of his Doom bots was confusing, the continuity here is, well, it's really only more of a mess in my mind, especially considering how some important actions were later retconned as not being caused by Doom, and how it became confusing going back to know like when Doom was actually the true Doom or when it had been an imposter in disguise. Did you get all of that? Yeah. Me neither.
Number 10, Thor and Hela. Starting off with an example of why the Ultimate Universe does some unnecessary stuff from time to time, Thor was forced to kill his supervillain's son to save America from civil war. But what's funny, well not funny, is that wasn't even the unnecessary part. So it begins in the aftermath of an event called Ultimatum, which we will get to much later on. Basically, Ultimate Thor ends up sacrificing his own life to save his lover, Valkyrie. While in the afterlife, in order to be reunited with and save Valkyrie, the goddess Hela makes Thor fight a whole army of undead soldiers, which he does. But then Thor asks what else he needs to do, and this goddess just starts undressing herself and demanding that Thor gives her a baby, which of course he does, and it doesn't even save Valkyrie. This comes back later with the child, Modi Thor's son, being raised by a much more villainous Loki, feeling abandoned and seeking revenge, trying to turn America into a new Asgard while wielding an Infinity Stone and forcing Thor to eventually strike down his own evil son. Number 9. Look what they did to my boy! Almost everyone loves Deadpool. Weirdly, even some moms love Deadpool. So when the gritty, realistic, mature Ultimate Universe was going to bring the character in, you'd expect it to be a match made in heaven. No! I blame this version of the character for the monstrosity we got 3 years later in 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine. The Ultimate Marvel version of Deadpool was a sergeant in the military named Wade Wilson. He's grim, he's angry, he's way too serious, and he also is an incredibly racist mutant hater. Oh, he was also a cyborg with incredible strength, he retained his signature healing factor, and instead of just being disfigured, he had no skin at all. And he's missing part of his skull, so his head is instead encased in a clear plastic case for everyone to see. Deadpool leads the Reavers, who are also racist, in trying to kill prominent mutants. Thankfully, Ultimate Deadpool was taken off the board by the 616 Deadpool in Deadpool Kills Deadpool in 2013. Number 8. Hank Pym needs to chill. Hank Pym has not really ever been that great of a dude. He has multiple untreated mental disorders and crazy insecurities that have caused him to do multiple not so great things in his time in the regular universe. But of course, everything in the Ultimate Universe gets ramped up a bit. Pym got involved in a very heated argument with his wife, Janet Van Dyne, over her friendship with Captain America. In Ultimates issue number 6, things start to get physical until the Wasp shrinks down to her smaller size to get away from her husband. Unfortunately, the terribly insecure Hank cornered her and sprayed her wasp-sized self with bug spray. She hid under a desk to catch her breath after inhaling the toxic fumes, while her husband just kept on with the emotional bombardment. But he didn't stop there. He then sent an army of ants after her until he realized what he was doing to his own wife. This stuff kind of boils my blood just a little bit. The fight resulted in Janet's very near death, her hospitalization, and his expulsion from the Ultimates. Number 7. Making the Maker. The Fantastic Four in the Ultimate Universe remained relatively the same, at least in their family dynamics. Their backstory was slightly modified, but overall the four main heroes lived as you'd expect, until it all went Marvel Ultimate-y. First off, Sue Storm and Reed Richards lost a child together, but then Reed Richards proposed to Susan Storm and she rejected his proposal. Just like that, the Fantastic Four was no more, but that's not the end. What came next, really quickly I might add, was Reed going absolutely bonkers, faking his death, de-lifing his family, planning alien terror plots around the world, being trapped in the negative zone where he primed his intellect by stretching his brain and skull, and he built an army. Since he was horribly burnt by the Human Torch, Reed took to wearing a helmet and founded the Children of Tomorrow, the Dark Ultimates, and he called himself the Maker. He became an incredibly evil Reed Richards. Number 6. Cap hates France? Look, despite the name, Captain America, Steve Rogers, is very much a protector of the world, not just America. So it was really odd when in Ultimates number 12 from Mark Miller, Brian Hitch, and Paul Neary, we see the Ultimate Marvel Universe Captain America verbally wailing on France, of all places. Captain America is caught in a fight with Herr Kleiser, an old German rival. Just for better context, Nick Fury is there too. Captain America is obviously the hero though, so eventually he gets the upper hand. It was just so odd that when Kleiser was pinned by Cap and asking for surrender, well, Cap digs his shield into the dude's stomach and says, "Surrender? Surrender? You think this letter on my head stands for France?" The comment was kind of fueled by the time period it was written in, as the states were entering into a war and France refused to join them, leading to some anti-France feelings in the real world. But this World War II era dig at the country left a bad taste in pretty much everyone's mouth, especially from a character that is supposed to be much, much better than that. Number 5. Wolverine. Why are you so weird? Look, I'm gonna get into all the weirdness that is the Ultimate Universe Wolverine in a sec, but one thing that kind of immediately sticks out is how this version of Wolverine seems to repeatedly swing for ladies that are a little below his age bracket, or like a lot below, and always redheads, which I guess kinda checks out from the 616 version too. Jean Grey, Firestar, and the one we're talking about today, Mary Jane Watson. In Ultimate Spider-Man number 66, Wolverine and Peter Parker end up switching bodies after Wolverine makes some unwanted advances on the teenage Jean Grey, who psychically swapped their bodies. I don't know why she did that, but she did it. Wolverine finds some drawbacks, but apparently they pale in comparison to the perk that is the teenage Peter's girlfriend, Mary Jane. Wolverine tells MJ that he, in Peter's body, doesn't need to go to school, while also making some crude advances towards her as well. It comes off as kinda creepy and really cringy. Number 4. Wolverine. How you die. Now, on the topic of Wolverine, he himself has quite a few moments that make him kinda awesome and some that make him kinda horrible. Ultimate Wolverine is no longer feral, and he does not have the classic healing factor. Instead, he gets the survival factor, which is kind of a heck of a lot better. He can survive a heck of a lot, almost anything. S.H.I.E.L.D. chopped his body off, leaving only his head, and he breathed through his skin. They put his head in a vacuum and he went into stasis. Hulk ripped his body and threw it into another mountain range, and when Wolverine found that half, it was still fresh, no organ failure, no rot, and the blood was somehow still pumping, and he just put himself back together again with no issues. Ultimate Wolverine is unkillable by any means, no matter what you do. It was also implied that Ultimate Wolverine was the precursor of all mutants. He was sort of the first mutant in the world, so all the other mutants are basically products of Weapon X experimentation on Wolverine. On top of that, his blood could be synthesized into a substance that gives mutants insane power boosts. Marvel made Ultimate Wolverine insanely overpowered, and then they absolutely killed him in the stupidest way possible. He died because Magneto did a hand wave thingamajig, as someone on Reddit said, and apparently he destroyed every single one of Wolverine's cells while ripping out his adamantium. Number 3. Is this Game of Thrones? If you haven't noticed by some of the previous points, Marvel did a lot of unnecessary sexualizing of the Ultimate Universe. And to just push it a bit further into unnecessary odd choices made by Marvel for this universe, they included the incestuous relationship between the characters of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Somehow it actually feels worse than the one in Game of Thrones, maybe just because it was extremely shocking and the two characters never had anything even similar to this in the 616 continuity. Fans wondered whether it was really necessary for Mark Millar to pair the two characters together and questioned whether the twist added anything new to the story at all. Answer: it didn't. Probably the biggest issue with this revelation is that now the characters can't so much as look at each other without fans accusing the writers of returning to the incest plot from the Ultimate X-Men. Number 2. Blob. After the events of that ultimatum thing, which I'm so close to talking about, many heroes were taken out and or unaccounted for. One such hero would be Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. Now, as we know, Hank Pym, Ant-Man, was kind of the worst. And though a terrible husband, he still diligently looked for his missing wife. What he found instead was the villain the Blob feasting on her remains. It's probably one of the most striking images from the whole Ultimate Universe, but it just gets stranger and somehow worse. Enraged at the sight of it, Ant-Man converted to his giant man state and picked up the Blob in his giant hand and bit Blob's head clean off and spat it on the ground to the shock and horror of his teammates. And in at number 1 is Ultimatum. Ultimatum was supposed to be how the writers finished off the Ultimate Universe stories. Obviously it didn't turn out that way, but as you can tell from previous points, writers kinda just went a little haywire with things they would do with a dying universe story. Basically, Magneto, who has been a pretty brutal villain in this universe so far, goes even farther during the mega event where stakes were way high. Basically, after Magneto gains control of the Hammer of Thor and is manipulated by none other than Dr. Doom, he messes with the magnetic pillars of the world, flipping them on their head spread and sending weather into a frenzy. The big event was a giant tsunami called the Ultimatum Wave that basically put New York underwater and brought a giant casualty list along with it. Bruce Banner drowns but the Hulk lives, the Wasp gets eaten as mentioned before, and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are killed off. In a bit more of a divisive move, while the X-Men are looking for their fallen teammates in the wake of the tidal wave in New York, Magneto pays a visit to Professor X and in a pretty brutal scene snaps the professor's neck. Magneto also rips the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton and pretty much disintegrates him like we talked about before. Number 10. Black Widow and Iron Man. A change in the Ultimate Universe that actually made sense in my head for some reason was the relationship between Tony Stark and Black Widow. Shortly after Iron Man joined the S.H.I.E.L.D.-sponsored Ultimates team, he and Natalia Romanova struck up their relationship, and it went so far the two eventually got engaged, with Tony even giving Black Widow her own nanite-controlled suit of armor, which did look really cool by the way. But the happy couple didn't last too long, as it turned out that Natalia was actually a traitor, working for the Liberators, which is a whole other thing we could talk about. After she turned on Tony, she managed to end the life of his longtime butler and close friend Jarvis. Kind of an unredeemable act there. So it didn't feel so bad when Tony used the nanites inside Natalia's body, the ones used to control that fancy new armor, to paralyze her and steal information from her brain about the Liberators and her betrayal. And then he knocks her unconscious with a wine bottle, giving her brain damage. There was also this whole raunchy video that got leaked of the two, which just felt completely random to me, but hey, it happens. Number 9. Black Panther. A lot of stuff in the Ultimate Universe I can look past, but I gotta say I don't like what they did to Black Panther here. You see, in the Ultimate Universe, T'Challa Udaku, the youngest son of King T'Chaka, when he became jealous of his older brother M'Baku, who was set to take on the Panther Trials, T'Challa decided to secretly go do it himself. What are the Panther Trials? Well, it basically involves hunting and defeating an actual panther in combat. So yeah, the young T'Challa ain't ready for that kind of thing, and he loses. Badly, with the panther actually tearing out T'Challa's throat. Being brought back to Wakanda, he undergoes 16 hours of surgery, and even then, the supposedly super advanced nation is not able to save him. So of course, they turn to the United States of America. Specifically, they turn to the super reliable Weapon X program. Now, Weapon X is able to save T'Challa, minus his vocal cords, but similar to Wolverine, they give him mutant abilities that enhance his strength, speed, stamina, agility, night vision, and they even give him retractable bone claws, and then give him the title of Black Panther. He is then put under the control of Nick Fury, who refuses to let him go back to Wakanda, makes him the property of the United States, and has him trained under Captain America. Now there is more to this story, but taking the awesome culture-rich Wakandan hero and making him a sort of Wolverine clone who can't speak and is the property of the United States government just kind of feels wrong, man. Number 8. Victor Von what? This point is going to cover one very small thing. For the ultimate version of Doctor Doom, I honestly don't have much issue with the changes they implemented. The metal skin, the goat legs, the backstory change, even what they did to his kingdom, it's alright, I guess, for me. One thing I cannot abide is changing his last name to have him seemingly related to a real-world action star. Victor Van Damme? Van Damme? Why? Who do these buffoons think they are? Sorry, I'm getting a little worked up here. He was also way more of a petty character than he was an extremely dangerous villain. Luckily, that changed slightly before the Ultimate run came to an end, but the damage was done. Let's just move on. Number 7. Blue Goo. Maybe this is more just really weird as opposed to a horrible moment, but thanks to sci-fi writer Orson Scott Card of Ender's Game fame, we got a version of Iron Man who, due to a virus that led to the passing of his mother and affected Tony upon his birth, lives in constant pain unless he's coated in this really strange blue goo created by his father, which was developed as a sort of bio armor. It does the trick, but it's still rather odd, and fans were not fans of this change. Personally, I think a lot of the changes made to Iron Man's backstory in the Ultimate Universe were really interesting, and it was different from 616, which made it fun, but the blue skin was an interesting choice to say the least. This point is a little unfair as Marvel decided to retcon this out of his history, but that don't change the fact that it did indeed happen, and it was rather strange too. Number 6. Hulk eating people. The Incredible Hulk has always sort of tiptoed the line between being a hero and being a monster. In the 616 universe, we can more often than not say he is a hero, but in the Ultimate Universe, Not a chance. For starters, his origin already starts Bruce Banner off on a bad foot. He is made to feel inferior by both his ex and other heroes, which is what spurs him to become the Hulk in order to feel bigger, I guess? Sounds like a supervillain to me. That's because he basically is. After he transforms, he goes on a rampage through New York, taking out more than 800 people and even eating some of them. Sure, the idea haunts Bruce, which we learn in the Ultimate Hulk solo comic as he recounts the feeling of eating a person, but there isn't really a redemption here. Also, what the hell is up with the whole Freddie Prinze Jr. thing? It's hilarious, but what? Number 5. Lack of Sabretooth. Sabretooth has always been a pretty terrifying dude. He ain't nice, he's extremely violent and extremely hard to bring down. And even more so in the Ultimate Universe, he becomes bonded with adamantium similar to Wolverine and even has retractable bone claws out of his forearms, also like Wolverine. Doesn't really need them, as he also eventually has his naturally occurring claws on each fingertip as well as his fangs and teeth laced with adamantium to just bump up the amount of absolutely bloody carnage he can produce. If this sounds awesomely terrifying, it's because it is, which makes it a shame when he doesn't really do much. Sabretooth in the Ultimate Universe, similar to 616, is kind of just a lackey to Weapon X and then later to Magneto. It just feels wrong to make such an imposing villain more imposing but not give him much to do. Number 4. Sabretooth versus Angel. Oh, actually, there is one thing of note here that Sabretooth does. One thing that was incredibly brutal and unnecessary in true Ultimate Universe fashion. In the aftermath of Magneto's ultimatum wave, he and Sabretooth waited in the Arctic for the heroes to come and try to apprehend them in Ultimatum issue number 4 from 2009. The first to arrive was Warren Worthington III, or Angel, who came crashing through a window with a punch straight to Magneto's big old face. But after Magneto gave the go-ahead, Sabretooth pounced at the crash-landed mutant, scratching the living hell out of his back, tore off one of his wings with his teeth, seeming to enjoy the brief cannibalism, and then stomped on Warren's neck with his boot, taking out the mutant in another of the Ultimate Universe's unceremonious dispatching of a fan-loved character. Thanks, Ultimate Universe! Thank you so much. Number 3. Dormammu and Doctor Strange. Speaking of unceremonious dispatching, Angel wasn't the only hero to meet his end in issue number 4 of Ultimatum. Right at the beginning of the comic, it seems that the Hulk's rampaging has led to Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, and he begins just smashing everything, including magical items, which results in a blinding flash of light. Next thing we know, the dread Dormammu is free from the dark dimension and is in magical conflict with Doctor Strange. But Dormammu seems more than confident that he won't be defeated by the Sorcerer. It takes merely a few pages before Dormammu uses the Sorcerer Supreme's own sash, belt, cloak thingy, constricting it around Strange's body so tightly that it explodes his head in an extremely grotesque couple of panels that I'm not sure we're even allowed to show. Just like that, the normally extremely powerful Dr. Stephen Strange is out of the picture. Number 2. Hawkeye's family tragedy. Say what you will about the ultimate version of Clint Barton. He is much less heroic than his 616 counterpart, he is a S.H.I.E.L.D. sponsored killer, and he is much more of a secret agent. Ultimately, he is the basis for the MCU's version of the character, from his look to his family. But what the Ultimate Universe did to his family, or more specifically what Black Widow did to them, I should say, will likely never be seen in the MCU, which we should all thank our lucky stars for. As we talked about all the way up at the 10th point, Natalia Romanova did not turn out to be a great gal. She was working for the Liberators, a group of heroes from around the globe who were opposed to the amount of power held by the United States thanks to S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimates. It was a cool, realistic concept, and one that could have opened up the comics to more worldwide inclusiveness. Instead, it was kind of just a way to make America seem superior. After Natalia's revelation as a traitor, she organized the assassination of her longtime Black Ops partner Hawkeye's entire family, even personally taking out his son Callum. For her crimes, Clint does put an arrow between her eyes in Ultimates 2's final chapter, as she is in a hospital bed thanks to Tony Stark giving her brain damage. It doesn't really help the whole situation. And in at number 1, Peter Parker comes back to life. One of the key things about the Ultimate Universe was supposed to be its realism, or at least its realism in a universe full of superheroes, sorcerers, gods, and monsters. One of the aspects of said realism was the fact that death would be permanent, which is about as real as you can get. The only problem was that didn't seem to last. One of the best things about the Ultimate Universe was Ultimate Spider-Man. It's regarded as not only the best thing out of that universe, but one of the best Spider-Man stories ever told. His eventual death after saving many people in Ultimatum, taking a bullet for Captain America, and then fighting and defeating Norman Osborn and the Six was equally as amazing, if not tragic and emotional. It also paved the way for another one of the Ultimate Universe's best, Miles Morales. So in order to make that amazing story and all the emotional weight it had going for it mean absolutely nothing, what do you know? Peter Parker wakes up in some underground laboratory, seemingly revived. Yay!
Number 10, Perma Gray. Or, well, mostly. Hulk would appear to be green a few times in the comics, but for the most part, he was always gray here. Apparently, he was green a few times for some reason that was, it was never really deeply delved into. It only happened once or twice in the universe, but it would later be established that gray was supposed to be the Hulk's coloring. I feel like they made him gray to denote a sort of shift in this Hulk's mentality and persona from 616's, and also to make him even more different in appearance than his 616 counterpart, as 616 Hulk is more often than not green, though he has also been gray from time to time. Super Soldier Serum. Bruce Banner was one of the scientists tasked with attempting to recreate the Super Soldier formula. Worried the credit would be kept from him, but also believing he had actually managed to recreate the serum, he decided to test it on himself. The result was that he was transformed into the beast that we come to know as the Hulk. So he didn't quite nail it. But he did manage to create a serum that would make a person unstoppably strong. However, because of the fact that he was now part man, part monster, he would end up being apprehended and even arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. Although at least he wasn't fully part monster yet. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about the Ultimate Universe, be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Hulk Serum. Ultimate Hulk would also require the Hulk Serum to even be able to transform. In fact, this at one point is used as an offhand explanation for why he has been occasionally green in appearance in the comics. It apparently had something to do with those batches of serum that Bruce Banner was using to transform, and that's like what made him green. I don't know, I guess he put some green dye in there or something. And in order for Banner to become Hulk at all, he would need the serum, which of course sometimes turned him green, but mostly still turned him gray. He would need the serum for the transformation, that is, until he mixed together the Hulk serum with the Super Soldier serum, which S.H.I.E.L.D. now had after uncovering Steve Rogers and extracting it from his blood. Consuming a version of those two serums blended together meant that Bruce Banner's DNA was permanently altered, meaning that he would no longer need the serum to Hulk out in the future, which was maybe not great for him. Number 7, Times Square Massacre. Bruce Banner combining the serums together would not only alter his DNA, but result in a massacre that he would be held responsible for. The Ultimates had been getting bad press lately, and Bruce saw an opportunity to help the team out as a fellow ally and scientific, though not field-oriented team member. Only S.H.I.E.L.D. knew his secret that he was both Bruce Banner and the monster known as the Hulk, so he decided to unleash the Hulk on the world to give the Ultimates a villain that they could beat. However, this ended up being a not great plan. Bruce was also jealous of Freddie Prinze Jr. at the time, who was currently out on a date with his then ex, Betty Ross, and also in his Hulk form ended up unleashing that frustration. So enacting his plan here resulted in the death of hundreds of people. Later, when his secret was leaked and the world found out who the Hulk, or should I say who Bruce really was, S.H.I.E.L.D. had no choice but to put him on trial for his crimes. He was actually found guilty and sentenced to death, which they intended to follow through with by dropping a nuclear bomb on Banner. Transforming into the Hulk, however, would prevent Banner from dying there, and both he and Hulk would thereby survive that death sentence. Number 6, Assassination Attempts. While their attempt at killing Bruce Banner failed initially, it wouldn't be the last time that S.H.I.E.L.D. would try to take out the Hulk. Later on, Nick Fury would send Wolverine to hunt down Hulk. Fortunately, Wolverine would end up deciding against killing the Hulk, but it wouldn't matter anyways, as S.H.I.E.L.D. found a new way to control the Beast, finding something more useful to hold over his head so they could have better control over him, thereby no longer needing to kill him. Number 5, Ultimates. Banner would continue to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., but would also kind of become their hostage in a way. He would eventually end up joining the Ultimates, but was also used as a weapon by S.H.I.E.L.D., who would often even unleash the Hulk on their enemies. All while this was going on, Banner attempted to get better control over the monster within him, but would also attempt and succeed in escaping from S.H.I.E.L.D. on a few occasions. At one point, they held Betty Ross, whom he loved, hostage in an attempt to control him. That's what I was talking about in the last point. Hulk was never really a willing member of the Ultimates, to be clear, but instead was made to be an ally of theirs against his will, whereas Bruce Banner was like an ally of the Ultimates initially because he was a scientist, until he had this whole Hulk thing going on. And like I said, not only was Hulk used as an unwilling ally of the Ultimates, but S.H.I.E.L.D. would also use him as a direct weapon, putting him in a pod and shooting him out like a missile in the direction of their enemies. Number 4, adamantium. Adamantium is Hulk's weakness, except when it's not. Adamantium is one of the few materials strong and sharp enough to break Ultimate Hulk's skin, but it doesn't always succeed in hurting him. The Hulk, like in 616, can become stronger the more angry he gets, so we have seen instances in the Ultimate Universe where he was simply too mad to actually be able to get harmed with adamantium. At one point, they try to puncture his skin with an adamantium needle, but Hulk's skin is so tough at that time because of how furious he is that he just breaks it. Number 3, killed Spider-Man's parents? Spider-Man's parents were killed by the Hulk? No, not really. But it was definitely made to seem that way in Ultimate Origins. In issue number 4, we see Bruce as the Hulk losing control and destroying his lab. This is implied to be his first transformation and taste of that loss of control. Richard Parker also happened to be working in the lab that day. His wife Mary came to pick him up with their infant son Peter in tow. I guess she couldn't get a sitter or something like that. Richard, in fact, is in the lab when it explodes and comes crashing down around him, and we see Mary get struck by a steel beam as it flies out from the explosion. It seems to be heavily implied that the two of them die here, although that completely contradicts everything that has already been established about their deaths and about Peter's childhood, which we know from Ultimate Spider-Man. And I think, oddly enough, I think this issue is Bendis, and I believe all of that is also Bendis, so I don't know what's happening here. It's like Bendis contradicting himself. Now, for this whole event to have actually happened with the Parkers, it's more likely that they were just very badly wounded in this explosion, despite the fact that it looks like they are both quite dead here. It's actually little Peter who manages to reverse the transformation, helping Hulk to calm down and turn back into Bruce here, only for him to get beaten down by Nick Fury, who is evidently none too pleased with his lead scientist. He's like, "What did you do? Don't do that. Now we're going to basically hold you as our prisoner." Number 2, Dark Ultimates. While Hulk has also worked alongside the Ultimates in the past, he also has no real allegiance to the team, especially considering he was often made to join the fray against his will. So it wasn't surprising that when the Maker, aka Ultimate Reed Richards, offered the Hulk a place on his more sinister Dark Ultimates team, that the Hulk readily accepted that. Reed was hoping that the team would help him to win in a final standoff against the Ultimates. Little did any of them know that there was an even greater threat looming that was even bigger than either side could have imagined. A threat that would successfully wipe out their entire universe of Earth 1610. At least temporarily. Number 1, First Hulk. Bruce Banner might be acknowledged as the Hulk even in the Ultimate Universe, but on Earth 1610, he was not the first person to become the Hulk. The first Hulk in the Ultimate Universe was actually Tyrone Cash, aka Leonard Williams. Williams was a professor and scientist who had actually been a mentor to Bruce Banner. He had his own motives for working to create the serum that would turn him into the Hulk, and actually took it before Banner did. Cash would use his brilliant mind to avoid capture for years, and would also operate as a criminal during that time. But eventually he would be apprehended and would end up joining the Ultimate Avengers team, which in this reality is a team more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad than the Avengers of Earth 616. You can check out Tyrone Cash in Ultimate Avengers 2, which is the name of a series, not like issue 2. Just to be clear, there's a lot of numbers in Ultimates.
Number 10, Origins. Why not start at the beginning? Let's do it. Ultimate James Howlett first appeared in Ultimate X-Men issue 1 back in 2001. Now his combat days began as a paratrooper for the Canadian Army during World War II. He was part of the invasion of Sicily, and funny enough, that's actually where he met Private Nick Fury and Private Fisk. Now Fisk got hit by a bullet, and then the three of them were all taken away. They were captured, even though James was from a different unit. He was from Canada. He just got roped into it. So that's where they all got put into the Weapon X complex and were under experimentation by Dr. Abraham Cornelius. Now luckily James got out of there. The other two though, they were tested on to become this new Captain America. They were the test subjects of the new serum. But if you want to hear more of that Ultimate side, check out one of our playlists. We explain quite a bit of it. So yeah, in the Ultimates, Nick Fury is a super soldier. How cool is that? But Wolverine got out of there. He didn't want to be part of it. Well, he kind of got out of there. He got really, really close until a stray bullet hit him last second, and then everybody was in shock as he healed himself. So they dragged him right back in and they're like, well, we got to do some tests. What's going on here? So we got this mutant ability down the road, whereas main Wolverine was just born a mutant. So key difference right there. Number 9, Mutant Zero. So Dr. Cornelius was super into this guy, and then during these experiments, because obviously they wanted to pick him apart and see what the hell just happened, during these experiments they discovered this gene that when it's activated gives you superpowers, basically. So he came up with the term for them. He called them mutants, which is a great word, gotta admit. And James Howlett was mutant number 1. Well, actually, Mutant Zero was his term. Now the genome was spread around the planet over time, causing a few more mutants to pop around, just a few of them. And also those scientists who like to experiment on James and others, they got what was coming eventually, because a mutant boy down the road had some Weapon X scientists as parents, and when he found out how they were treating James and others, well, he took out both of his parents and set James free. Yeah, that little boy was Magneto. The Ultimates are sick. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be really helpful for us. Or if you're feeling good today, maybe you want to hit that subscribe button. I mean, no pressure, but it's right there. Thank you so much. Let's get right back to the video. Number 8, Weapon X. So yeah, that whole thing with Eric was a big deal, but Wolverine was actually recaptured later on, this time by Colonel John Wraith, who was not fond of mutants at this point. There were a few of them and he was like, okay, this has gotten out of hand. And at this point, John was also the new head of the Weapon X program. So they wiped Wolverine's memory and gave him the name Logan. And this is where things got real for James, more real than before. This is when he was tortured. The other guy who was there, who was also getting tortured, his name was Victor Creed. And Victor was getting on his nerves the whole time. And this was when the adamantium was bonded to Logan's skeleton. So a lot of things happened during this time as well at Weapon X. So he was a mindless brute, and things took a turn one mission when he was deployed in the desert during the Gulf War. The truck got ambushed and Wolverine was let loose. This insane, mindless mutant weapon. No big deal at all. So he wiped out everybody. He took out every single member except for one guy, Nick Fury. He didn't take him out, he saved his life and carried him all the way to base because part of him still remembered meeting him early on in his life. Nick Fury actually recognized him as well and then came back later to set him free. What goes around comes around. Number 7. Brotherhood of Mutant Supremacy. So Magneto of course becomes an evil ruler in this universe as well, and he and Charles once shared a dream about creating a safe haven for mutants called the Savage Land. But a few arguments later and a pole in the spine, and now Charles is in a wheelchair, they're not talking anymore. So now Magneto is full-on villain and he creates this Brotherhood of Mutant Supremacy, and his first idea was to recruit Wolverine and attack the Pentagon. And that Savage Land ends up becoming the new evil headquarters, not a paradise. So Magneto wanted to take out Charles for good this time, not just paralyze him. He wanted him gone, so he sent Wolverine to get the job done. So Wolverine was undercover the entire time. Quicksilver actually almost blew it at one point, but Wolverine came through and impressed the X-Men. Number 6, joining the X-Men. So while he was in deep cover, Wolverine sparked up a romance with Jean Grey. Now he wanted to seal the deal, really make it look believable, so he went on with this fake romance. Thing is, Wolverine actually fell in love with her. Oops. Now Scott, aka Cyclops, was a little upset during this, and Magneto actually wanted Scott to be with Wanda. But Scott had other ideas. But Scott was actually undercover as well, so he was on the bad team and then Wolverine was on the good team. It was basically The Departed, but superheroes instead. The Jean and Wolverine affair gave Scott a reason to go and talk shop with Magneto. So he went in and then found out this plan, which was to wipe out Washington with Sentinels, and then the X-Men intervened and saved the president, who was naked at this time, just, because sure. And this is when Wolverine fully becomes an X-Men. He attacks Magneto, with Quicksilver even removing Magneto's helmet to make it easier for him. So everybody came around and joined the good team, which is great. And then a page later, Wolverine is now in his new, much cozier home. And their first mission as the new X-Men team with Wolverine was to head back to Weapon X as a team to get some answers. Number 5, jealousy. Now this Wolverine gets pretty jealous as well. He takes things to a new height when he discovers that Jean Grey truly loves Cyclops. So Logan now wasn't a fan of Cyclops, there was this deep rift growing between them. So Charles was like, hey guys, why don't you both go to Savage Land together and work it out? You know, as dudes, couple dudes working it out. You can talk, throw rocks, whatever. They did not work it out. They got into a huge fight, and what happened really was Wolverine let Cyclops fall to his death in order to get Jean back. Cyclops survived because, you know, of course he did, and he exposed Wolverine to the crew, but Cyclops didn't blast him with his visions. No, he just blasted him with words. So he let Wolverine stay on the team, and this whole time Wolverine just sat and felt guilt. He was like, damn, maybe I am not a good friend after all. Interesting. He started to become a leader, and he let his past self die. He became a role model for the younger X-Men like Rogue, and then he ended up becoming pretty good friends with Cyclops, even though, you know, he threw him off a cliff and all. Number 4, Sabretooth. So yeah, maybe you're wondering what ended up happening with that other insane guy, Victor. Well, when the team first went back to Weapon X, they came across Wraith and Sabretooth. Now, Sabretooth did one of the worst things ever at this point. He burned the files on Wolverine, literally just destroying his past right in front of him. And this leads them to their first violent conflict. They go back and forth, throwing each other into trees, and Sabretooth thinks that he's got him at one point. He's got him underwater, so he's holding Wolverine's head underwater, and he's questioning how exactly a healing factor will fix a suffocated brain, which is a great question. He's like, oh yeah, you hear that popping in your nose? That's your brain cells exploding. Now, it's cool, except Wolverine's underwater this whole time. He probably didn't hear any of this monologue, but it's still cool. But Wolverine's got that healing factor, which is probably stronger than we think. Number 3, healing factor. Ultimate Wolverine has been known to have a weaker healing factor than our 616 Wolverine, but it's kind of his main thing. I mean, Ultimate Wolverine can regenerate his body tissue so well that at one point, believe it or not, Wolverine was stuck under an iceberg, and the only way he survived was to bank on that healing factor, and he ate himself. The dude ate his arms, like he ate his body. It's like 127 hours, only, you know, he's fine. He just has to eat good. He ate strips of his own arm because he had to. I mean, he can grow it back, so it's not too horrible. No, that's still pretty horrible, actually, now that I think of it. Superheroes are wild because this opens up the meat dimension theory, which is just a blast. If you haven't heard of it, I strongly recommend you Google it after this. All this regeneration, where does the meat come from? Where does it go? Can he eat forever? What's going on? Question for you guys, if you could regenerate your cells and you were stuck, would you do it? Would you eat yourself? Let us know in the comments. That's a weird thing. Let us know in the comments though. I'm still curious. Number 2, adaptable. In Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk, it was said that Wolverine's power might be the survival ability. It's like his main thing. Because at one point his head gets clean off his body. It's just taken off, but he's still alive. And Nick Fury makes a good point here. He's like, well, if it was a healing factor, he would still be dead right about now, because it's just his head. It still doesn't make any sense. But Ultimate Wolverine's head was alive and well. Now, without his lungs, he should not be able to breathe, but he adapted and started breathing through his skin. So he's adaptable in the most ultimate way. Number 1, combat. So the way he's able to fight off Sabretooth after being held underwater is just by going right in between the legs. He fights dirty, claws are out, he's doing what he has to be done. Wolverine says, hey, at least I have enough brain cells left to cover my family jewels in a fight. And I gotta tell you, that's a great call. Also, that's a great sentence to say right before you toss somebody off a cliff. This guy loves tossing people off cliffs, eh? Wow. So the ultimate combat is a bit more dirty, a little more rough than his 616 counterpart, I'd say. But that's because he kind of has to be, because his healing factor isn't as strong as a 616, and even his adamantium skeleton is not that helpful. Adamantium is weaker in the Ultimate Universe, fun fact. But even so, one time Magneto ripped his skeleton out of his skin and Wolverine had to regrow his entire body back. That's the most painful thing I can imagine. I still don't want that to happen, healing or not. I would fight dirty even if my bones were made of adamantium and even if my skin still came back out of nowhere. Because pain is still pain, and I don't want any of that pain. No, no sir.